Warhammer 40k, Far East Storm. Humanity has never been so close to the edge of destruction. If it does not fight, it will be destroyed. Only the Star Marines stood up. They are warriors blessed by the Emperor, the legendary guardians. They travel in the starry sky, guarding humanity for thousands of years. The storm is about to rise, and it starts from the Far East. Chapter 1. When the lightning struck, space and time both vibrated slightly. It was just a subtle vibration, too small to be detected by any existing machine, but in such a moment, a student was unlucky, and his soul was swept into the narrow gap by the lightning. Lee was killed, and then his soul passed through the gap between time and space and reached another world. Lee traveled through like this. It was like a bolt from the blue. When the news first came, no one believed their ears. Until their guns were aimed at themselves and their weapons began to roar towards the direction of the earth, everyone really understood. No one expected that the War Master Horus would betray. For anyone, this was something they had never thought of. Even now that the fact has happened, it is still considered incredible by everyone. War Master Horus, he was once one of the most beloved and trusted children of the Holy Emperor. During the glorious Great Crusade, the Great Emperor entrusted everything on the front line to his most trusted child. War Master Horus never failed the Emperor's hopes. He brought the Empire victory again and again, even countless times. But now he has betrayed with those troops who were once loyal to the Empire. Half of the Space Marines have betrayed the Holy Emperor. Their souls have been corrupted by the evil gods hidden in the chaos. They turned their guns and wanted to destroy the Emperor. They wanted to destroy the entire human race. But what a shameful behavior! These people were once the pride of the Emperor and even mankind. The Space Marines were originally the Emperor's paladins. They rode the Empire's warships in the ocean of the starry sky, and constantly landed from the starry sky to fight in one world after another. They fought against brutal aliens, various bloodthirsty aliens, and various enemies of the Empire. They used to be the sharpest sword in the Emperor's hand. They brought the Emperor's anger to the enemy. They have won countless victories and honors for the Empire, and destroyed countless enemies of the Empire, but now, this sharp sword turns around, and its blade is aimed at the heart of mankind, the earth, and pierces it. They know who is the most important person in the entire Empire and the entire human race. They also know who leads mankind to prosperity, and they know who protects mankind in the galaxy. It is the Great Emperor. The enemy wants to harm the Holy Emperor. Horus, the despicable traitor, wants the Emperor dead. The remnant of Horus might succeed. Robert Lee thought about this in his mind while punching the enemy in front of him. On the mechanical boxing gloves was the famous crow claw. The indestructible and sharp electric claws easily pierced the enemy's head armor, and blood gushed out violently along the metal claws, but this only lasted for a short while. The crow claw was not an ordinary steel claw. It was fixed on the boxing gloves and integrated with the entire power armor. At the same time, the steel claws also carried a terrifying electric current. A blue electric current flashed through the steel claws, and the head of the enemy in front of him was completely burnt off. The blood was turned into red mist by the high temperature and slowly floated up. As Robert Lee expected, the blood would only flow for a short while, and death would always follow. He was already familiar with this process. On the battlefield, blood continued to flow, and the front line of the Empire was crumbling. The heart of the Empire is bleeding. Horus is the War Master. Among the Emperor's many sons, only he has the most profound understanding of war. Now this war genius has inserted a sharp sword into the heart of mankind. The earth is being attacked by Horus's legion. Blood is flowing. It will only flow for a short time, and death will always follow. That will be the death of mankind. This cannot be allowed to happen. Such thoughts injected a trace of strength into Robert Lee's tired body. He kicked the corpse in front of him away. The corpse flew back violently, knocking down a group of enemies, and Lee's body instantly turned into a black shadow, and then pounced on the most densely populated place of the enemy. He waved his hands violently, and the sharp crow claws brought up a puff of blood. Along with the blood and screams, the fallen enemies floated up one by one. Robert Lee was wearing a gorgeously decorated power armor, harvesting the lives and souls of the enemies without any pause, just like cutting wheat. He had no mercy, no hesitation, and walked on the battlefield like a black god of death. The crow claw always eliminated the enemy accurately and quickly. No one could stand even one round in front of the brave Robert Lee. On the battlefield, he took the lives of the enemies as easily as cracking an egg. This was normal, because Robert Lee was an expert in killing. He was the youngest master in the Crow Guard. In terms of close combat killing skills, except for the leader Crow, almost no one in the regiment could compare with him. But even so, it was impossible to save the disadvantage on the battlefield. Horus, the scum, might be despicable and shameless, but he was undoubtedly the Emperor's son. He was a war master. His talent in war was unmatched. He was the most outstanding strategist in the Empire. He encouraged half of the Space Marines to abandon their honor and turn to attack the Emperor's palace. Brothers who may have fought side by side a century ago were now fighting each other. But now is not the time to sigh. Death and epic battles are no longer the only things that Robert Lee and the participants of this battle have to witness. Disgusting mutants, beast-like mutants, and countless roaring pagans continue to swarm, and soon, the enemy uses the corpses and blood on the battlefield to summon demons. All kinds of strange demons, led by the once glorious but now corrupted Star Warriors, rushed towards the Emperor's palace. Robert Lee waved the crow claw without stopping. He kept calm and kept killing the enemy with the maximum efficiency, but there were too many enemies. The evil enemies are simply invincible. The battle was not going well, no, it was almost in a desperate situation. The Immortal Wall was attacked the most violently, and the Lion's Gate spaceport in the distance fell almost in an instant. They had seized an excellent landing point, which allowed the enemy's army to rush in continuously. Robert Lee heard the roar coming from some places farther away, victory or death. The voice was majestic and powerful, desolate but resolute. That was the battle cry of the brothers of the Raven Regiment. The brothers who fought together had reached a critical moment. They used the battle cry to increase their determination and inspire their fighting spirit, but now everyone understood that victory had long been far away from them, and the only thing before them was the death of honor. The battle was so fierce, and the Emperor's guardians were so tenacious. You don't have to look up to see the sky as if it was in a rainstorm, but this rain is not made of water droplets, and the direction is from bottom to top. Countless anti-aircraft weapons used non-stop shooting to pour ammunition into the sky. The bullets drew bright lines in the sky with the traces of tracer bullets. Countless bright lines were woven together, just like the rain of death pouring from the earth to the sky. In a higher place beyond the sight, above the sky, the war was also burning fiercely. A rumbling sound came from the sky. This sound has never stopped since the beginning of the war. It was not thunder, but the artillery fire from the space fleet. The battle also unfolded in the outer space orbit of the Earth. The fleets arranged in formation and bombarded each other with artillery fire. Warships against warships, artillery against artillery, cruel and heroic fighting methods, just like two strong men facing each other with guns, competing to see who caused more damage to the other party and who could hold on longer. Accompanied by artillery fire and violent explosions, warships were constantly blown up and sunk, and at this time on the Earth, warships as big as mountains could be seen falling from the sky. When the huge warships passed through the atmosphere at high speed, the broken ships rubbed against the atmosphere, emitting dazzling flames, like huge meteors. For the Emperor. In the warship, the helmsman miraculously had not died. At this time, he shouted slogans and still controlled the warship to crash into the enemy's position. But even such a heroic attack could not stop the enemy's pace. The rebels rushed forward like the tide in the waves, and there was no hope of victory. Robert Lee fought for a while in the direction where the war cry came from. He wanted to reunite with his brothers, so that he could at least help some of them. But moving forward on this battlefield full of enemies was not smooth, just like moving backwards in a river of red blood. After a while, the war cry from that direction disappeared. Robert Lee took the time to look at the place where the war cry came from. As expected, the brothers in the regiment had died. Chapter 2. Robert Lee was not sad, he was proud of them, because they died for the Emperor, a glorious death, a worthy death. And he believed that he would soon go with these brothers. Because for the Raven Guard, if they did not win, they would face death. But at this moment, there were waves of tremors on the ground, and a tall figure that made people feel desperate appeared in the distance. The huge mechanical figure appeared from the depths of the enemy. That figure was not unfamiliar. It was once the most powerful weapon in the Empire, the king on the ground, the Emperor's hammer, and the nightmare of the Empire's enemies. And now, the muzzle of this terrible war weapon is really facing its own people. Robert Lee could no longer keep silent and kill. He sighed and said, "Damn it, it's Titan. Retreat, the Raven's defense line retreats, Little Alan, call for heavy weapons support quickly, retreat 100 meters and reorganize the defense line." We must protect the Emperor. May the Emperor bless us. The brothers on the defense line shouted with Robert Lee, "May the Emperor bless us." But at this time, the Emperor was no longer able to protect his loyal soldiers. Titan had already pressed towards the position. Titan looked like a hunchbacked old man, but this old man was so huge, he was about 14 meters, no, even taller, like a building moving on two legs. Just looking up at Titan's tall body would make most soldiers lose their courage. At this time, Titan's hands were held horizontally. In fact, they were not his hands, but heavy weapons installed on Titan's left and right shoulders. At this time, Titan's muzzle was facing Lee's position, and the surging firepower poured out mercilessly. That was the roar of the giant Vulcan bolter. The earth began to shake, and the roar of the bombs enveloped everything. The firepower of the Titan was too strong, and in the blink of an eye the entire defense line was torn into pieces by this fierce firepower. Under the bombardment of heavy firepower, the solid earth undulated like waves, and the chariots, position artillery, and bunkers were thrown into the sky by the explosion like broken toys, rolling and flying far away. Titan, a powerful weapon left over from the golden age of mankind, is also the most powerful mechanical weapon in the Empire. It is a huge bipedal walking vehicle. Titan is so tall, like a moving building, and the crazy strafing of artillery from a high altitude is enough to make any resistance fall into despair. This won't work. Robert Lee clearly knows that his defense line is vulnerable to the fierce firepower of the Titan, and someone must come to delay time, otherwise, let alone retreating 100 meters, even if he retreats 10,000 meters, he will not be able to reorganize the defense line. In an instant, he made a decision, for the Emperor. Robert Lee shouted, dragging his claws and rushing towards the Titan. At the same time, the sound of mortars rang out, and Aelin's call worked. The artillery in the rear finally noticed the big guy Titan. Countless shells flew over with a whistling sound, slamming into the Titan mecha, making explosions and huge roars, but all these damages were blocked by an invisible shield surrounding the Titan. Damn it, it's a void shield. More, exhaust its energy. As a powerful weapon left over from the golden age of mankind, the Titan is not something that can be destroyed so easily. A Titan not only has heavy armor, but also is equipped with a rare void shield in the Legion, a special energy shield. Energy shields are not strange for the warships of the Imperial Navy, but weapons equipped with this equipment in the Imperial Army can be said to be very rare. Titans with these equipment are like a mobile fortress, solid and fierce. Unfortunately, things did not develop as Lee expected. The artillerymen never waste too much ammunition in the same place. The artillery extended from the position of the Titan to its back. The explosion and the shells gradually faded away, but the Titan was safe and sound. But there was no time to hesitate. Robert Lee charged at high speed, then jumped up suddenly and stepped on the head of an enemy in front who wanted to stop him. With the Terminator armor and the strength of his body, Lee stepped on the bastard's head into his chest with just one foot, and then he exerted force again and jumped up for the second time. This time, Lee jumped very high, high enough to touch the waist of the Titan. Lee did not waste this precious opportunity. The crow claw suddenly inserted into the Titan's armor, and it hung on the waist of the Titan like a doll. The enemy's frontline commander screamed angrily. For a moment, the enemy's guns in this area were all aimed at Lee, and then the terrible firepower poured towards Lee. "Teacher, be careful!" Irene's exclamation came from the communication channel. But all this did not affect Lee. He just calmly pulled out the steel claws inserted into the armor and climbed up calmly. Behind him, all kinds of explosive arrows and beams with destructive energy were blocked by a shield made of energy that suddenly appeared. This is the Void Shield. It's the enemy Titan's Void Shield. Aelin stared at everything in front of him in amazement. He thought his mentor had fallen into a deadly situation, but he didn't expect it to be like this. The enemy Titan's Void Shield blocked the violent and fierce firepower for the mentor, but thinking back, this is what should be done. As the outer energy shield of the Titan, the Void Shield cannot identify whether the firepower comes from friendly or enemy. The Void Shield is just faithfully performing its mission and it will block any firepower shot at the Titan. At this time, Lee was like a human hanging on the waist of a giant. He climbed towards the target without panic. The two steel claws on his fists flashed with a faint light. He pulled out, moved upward, and then swooshed deeply into the armor of the Titan. Then, with his hands alternating, step by step, Lee soon came to the hunched head of the Titan, where the control cabin of the mecha was. When Lee forcibly cut open the shell of the mecha with steel claws, Peeling off the shell of the control cabin like peeling a banana, he saw 3 terrified faces in the control cabin. How is it possible? The enemy's captain only had time to make such an exclamation before he was torn into pieces by Lee, who jumped in immediately. At the same time, Irene, who was reorganizing the position, was shocked to see that the huge Titan stopped moving. The captain in the control cabin is the core of the Titan, the soul of the Titan. Once the captain dies, the huge Titan will become a huge iron coffin on the battlefield. It will be unable to move or attack, and can only remain silent like death. Yet, the soldiers on the battlefield cheered loudly. It was such a heroic act to defeat the Titan by relying on only one person. Lee's action undoubtedly greatly boosted the morale of his own side. But the cheers did not last long, and were cut off by the vibration from the ground. Amid the rumbling of artillery fire, tall figures appeared one after another in the distance. They slowly appeared from below the horizon and lined up in a long line, like a wave of endless despair pressing towards everyone. Every time they took a step, the earth would tremble slightly, as if even the earth was afraid of such a powerful fighting force. Their huge steel figures slowly emerged from the smoke, bringing endless destruction and death. 1, 2, 3, 11, 12, too many, Aelin's voice was trembling. Impossible, such a powerful fighting force, we can't stop it. Lee stood on the shoulder of the Titan he killed, silently watching the new enemy appearing from afar. Little Aelin was scared, but Lee couldn't blame him. Aelin was Lee's apprentice. Lee had taught him for 5 years. He knew him. Although this young man was still like a stubborn stone, he had already revealed the brilliance of a rough jade after being polished. It would only take some time for him to become a noble knight fighting for the Emperor. Little Aelin was determined and had faith in his heart. He was not afraid of pain or death, but now even he was afraid. The appearance of the enemy's Titan army had dealt a heavy blow to his morale. Fighting at this point was meaningless. Lee sighed. Victory was hopeless, and there was only honorable death. Gentlemen, thank you for your hard work. I have seen your fighting. On behalf of the Emperor, I sincerely thank you. Now you have done enough. Please withdraw, warriors. Leave the rest to me. The holy voice suddenly resounded throughout the battlefield. In front of the Satan gate on the outer wall behind everyone, a noble figure stood like a god. Every warrior knew this man. He was considered the most noble of the Emperor's many sons. He was Sanguinius. At this time, Sanguinius was wearing golden armor, with a pair of white wings behind him. He held a long sword in his hand and stood in front of the gate. He raised his head slightly and looked at the surging enemies proudly, with disdain in his eyes. Lee could understand this emotion. Even if the enemy was powerful, what would it matter? These enemies who could not even hold on to their own beliefs and could not even keep their oaths were not worthy of respect at all. Chapter 3. But no matter what, the situation of the war has changed at this time. Because of the appearance of Sanguinius, the Emperor's legions, which were surrounded by enemies, no longer panicked. The troops deployed on the outer wall withdrew into the fortress in an orderly manner, while Sanguinius stood alone in front of Satan's gate, resisting it alone. Enemies are coming. He was so powerful that no powerful demon or warrior of chaos could survive a round in front of him. He waved the blood-stained red sword in his hand and used terrifying combat skills to destroy all those who dared to do so. Close to his enemy, the white wings behind him flapped the air powerfully, and golden light emanated from his white wings like powder scattered by the wind. Regardless of whether they were evil spirits or traitors, as long as they were contaminated by this golden light, they would be burned. Rise up, and the holy and sacred golden flames begin to burn from within the enemy's body. The swarms of enemies turned into human torches and fell to the ground before they could get close to Sanguinius. Most of the time, he wielded the giant sword with one hand. Even the blood of the enemies could not stop the golden light shining on the giant's sword. The sword was so sharp that even the air could cut off, and this is actually the case. Just by swinging the sword with one hand and slashing horizontally, all the enemies within 50 meters in front of the long sword will be cut into 2 pieces in an instant, and then more enemies will step on the corpses. Filling the gap with flesh and blood, he continued to rush towards Sanguinius crazily. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how crazy they were, they could not make Sanguinius take a step back. With just one person, Sanguinius blocked the surging enemy legions. But at this time, only Sanguinius himself knew that he was not fighting alone. There was at least one other person fighting with him on the outer wall. Lee was wearing a black Terminator armor, and his figure shuttled silently among the swarming enemy troops like a ghost, reaping the lives of his enemies. If Sanguinius is the most dazzling light on the battlefield, then Robert Lee, the melee master from the Raven Guard, is like a shadow under the strong light. He quietly and carefully shuttles around. Among the enemies beside Sanguinius, he used the brilliance of Sanguinius to hide himself, sliding quietly like a ghost. No one could realize that there was such a person on the battlefield. Only with Lee's advantage could he hide himself. Only these people would notice it when the claws coldly scratched their throats or entered their hearts for the first time. Lee harvested silently, with deadly precision, and he also knew what kind of enemies could cause trouble to Sanguinius, powerful demons, and famous betrayers who deserved their names. Although Sanguinius it can also be dealt with, but it will definitely take some effort. And these tough guys often fell to the ground on the way to Sanguinius, fell to the ground, and then were trampled into a pulp by the enemies rushing up from behind. Sanguinius smiled, and he cheered again and again. At the same time, the golden armor emitted a more dazzling light. At this time, he seemed to be the protagonist in this Shura field. Both the enemy and himself would involuntarily cast their eyes on him. Under his cover, Lee quietly harvested lives more quickly, destroying the enemy's formation, killing the commanders on the front, and eliminating everyone who could give orders. In this case, the enemy was completely unable to make an effective attack. The demons and betrayers just attacked in a chaotic mess, and were then torn to pieces by the firepower slanting from the city wall, or blocked by the whizzing sharp edges. Cut off. At the same time, the giant cannon in the fortress began to roar, and the enemy's Titan Legion was stopped in its tracks. In this matter, this battle only belonged to two people. Sanguinius and Robert Lee relied on the strength of the two of them to block countless enemies from the Gate of Satan for a full hour. Until an hour later, when everyone retreated into the fortress. When Satan's gate slowly closed, Sanguinius smiled. He whispered to the enemy, "Let's go, my warrior, the battle is still long." At this time, Sanguinius turned around, not caring about the tide of enemies behind him. The door rumbled shut, but at this moment, a beam of light shot from a very far direction. This beam penetrated the battlefield, penetrated all the flesh and blood along the way, tore apart all the steel armor, and hit Senge directly. Lay! Sanguinius seemed to sense danger, and he turned around, but when he wanted to avoid it, he suddenly found that his body could not move. A terrifying will interfered with Sanguinius' movement in an instant. Sanguinius was inevitably hit by this sudden attack, but at this moment, a black shadow suddenly rushed in front of Sanguinius, and he blocked it for Sanguinius. A sure hit. At the critical moment, Robert Lee rushed out and blocked the fatal beam attack for Sanguinius. In a daze, Lee felt a terrible force tearing his soul apart, a cold thing poured into his body. Victory, victory, or. These were the last words Lee said to the astonished Sanguinius. On the other side of the battlefield, Horus lowered his fingers with a livid face. This curse that was sure to hit actually hit an unrelated person, which forced him to make some small changes to the originally perfect plan in his mind. But soon, a smile appeared on Horus's face that was as perfect as carved out of marble. Perhaps, this was fate. Destiny wanted to prove that Horus was a more perfect and powerful existence than the Emperor. Have you seen enough? At this time, Robert E. Lee was sitting on a metal chair, looking at the person in front of him sternly and slightly hostilely. Standing in front of Robert Lee was Lee from Earth. He was wearing a pair of light blue jeans and a white t-shirt. Under Robert Lee's gaze, he was scanning the surrounding environment somewhat helplessly. Where am I? What are those I just saw? Young man, this is the first lesson I want to teach you. Don't panic, stay calm. If there are problems, solve them one by one. There was a hint of hoarseness in the middle-aged man's heavy voice, but it was wonderful. It will make people feel at ease. Lee closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then opened his eyes again. It was still the huge room. In the center of the room was a steel chair with a simple structure. A middle-aged man he didn't know. Everyone is sitting on the chair. This middle-aged man is as tall as Lee just by sitting. This man is simply a giant. He is even taller than the American NBA basketball players Lee has seen on TV. To be tall, he is almost 3 meters tall. Beside the two of them, there were bookcases extending in all directions. These bookcases stretched towards the sky and in all directions, beyond the reach of their sight. Lee felt that he was in a world full of books. The whole world was a maze composed of huge bookcases and countless books, and Li and the giant in front of him were at the center of this world. Li was just a middle school student from Earth. He was just an ordinary person. It was impossible not to panic when he suddenly encountered this situation. But he quickly controlled himself because the person in front of him was right. At times like this, you can't panic. Li opened his eyes again, carefully looked at the giant in front of him, and asked carefully in a tentative tone, "Okay, don't panic, then the first question, who are you?" "I am Robert Li, the melee instructor of the Crow Guard and the Emperor's loyal servant." Robert looked at Li with a hint of approval in his eyes. "You are very good, you have regained your composure in such a short period of time. Of course, this is as an ordinary person, but as a soldier, you are far from qualified." I don't quite understand what you're talking about, but it doesn't matter. Do I know where I am? And how do I get home? You are in my consciousness space. Everything in front of us is just imagination in our minds." Robert Li waved his hand. In an instant, the space changed and the two of them appeared among the stars. Next, for one moment, the two of them were in an old castle, and in the blink of an eye, they returned to a world full of bookcases and books. Chapter 5. Li held his breath and opened his eyes wide without blinking. He firmly believed that he had not moved just now, but in an instant the world changed into three forms in front of his eyes. After a while, he sighed and said, "So cool, is this the Matrix? Don't compare it with that fake and boring story. Everything you see has nothing to do with the Matrix. You are in my body, you are in my brain, you are in my body. The spiritual world is not a computer virtual world. You also know about the Matrix." Li said with a long breath, "I just listened to your introduction, and I thought you were not from Earth. I thought I had traveled to a different world. Oh, I'm so relieved about this, it turns out I'm still on Earth. If my estimate is correct, we are indeed on the Earth, but it is not the Earth you imagined. If the definition of the word travel between you and me is not so different, then I can say with certainty, you have indeed traveled through time. The world you are now in is not the world you were familiar with before, but another world. Then how do you know about the Matrix? Are Hollywood blockbusters already broadcast across the world? How long do you think you have been in my body?" The middle-aged man said with a sneer, "For you, it may just be that your eyesight goes dark and you wake up after a nap. But in fact, you are in my body. It must have been sleeping in my body for thousands of years. On the 300th year since you entered my body, I looked through all your memories out of boredom. I know everything you know, even I also know those things that you have long forgotten. Can you look through my memory?" Li was shocked. Some things in people's interactions have already formed a certain pattern. For example, people must wear clothes when they face each other. If a person walks naked on the street and greets you, it will definitely make you feel very troubled. The same is true in terms of memory. According to middle-aged people, Li has no secrets left in front of this person. This makes Li felt as if he were naked, which was extremely unaccustomed to him. With just one thought, I can know everything you have experienced. I know your origins, the peaceful world you live in, the prehistoric planet also called Earth, and your peaceful but precious life. Don't put on this expression. Now our souls are in the same body. You have no secrets for me, and I have no secrets for you. Do you remember the first battle you saw? Ah, you're talking about the Battle of the Outer Wall. Li frowned after finishing speaking. He didn't know what the Battle of the Outer Wall was, but as he was talking, the word came out naturally. Yes, the Battle of the Outer Wall, you know this word. This is a good sign. It seems that you have learned how to learn from my memory. The Battle of the Outer Wall was the last one I participated in. Battle. What you saw was not a movie special effect or a ridiculous dream, but something that really happened. In that battle, someone attacked Sanguinius with great force, and I chose to protect him. I know, I saw, even felt it, Li recalled that feeling. The word saw was no longer enough to describe his feelings about that battle. The period before Xin arrived. The memory was so clear, it was as if Li had transformed into Robert E. Li and re-participated in that battle. He understood the Battle of the Outer Wall so clearly and clearly. Sanguinius is your friend? Why in the end? To protect him with your body or even your life. There is no friendship between Sanguinius and I. He and I served the Empire in different positions. He and I had never spoken a word or met him before that war. We had only heard about him. That's just a glorious name. Robert Li saw the young man's doubts, and the giant said calmly, I protect him just because he is very powerful? No, he is even the most powerful warrior in the empire. He can protect the emperor better than me. Is that all? It's just that. Robert Li looked at the astonished Li, shook his head and smiled, don't look like you can't believe it. You must know that what I faced in the end was a difficult battle. At that time, those who survived, maybe it takes more luck than the one who fell. Okay, don't interrupt now, listen to me. I was hit by a powerful energy. It should be a curse. This power does not exist in the real world. Among them, he is an evil force from subspace, a kind of magic, witchcraft, or something else. What is incomprehensible is that your soul actually follows this huge and evil force. Entered into my body. Li recalled the last scene on the battlefield, when Robert stood in front of Sanguinius and the fatal beam hit his broad back. You mean, I followed that beam of light and entered your body? Yes, Robert nodded and continued, at first, I thought this was some trick of the enemy, or a new and more terrifying force. After all, you invaded me with the power of the evil enemy. In the body, I wanted to wait for you to wake up, and then have a fair battle with you, a battle of will and soul, to see who among us is the winner in the end. Robert shrugged and said. But you slept for too long. In the 300th year, I looked through your memories out of boredom and learned everything about you. Then I understood that you were not some kind of trick of the enemy, you were just unlucky victims, ordinary people from another dimension. I see, Li nodded, so now that I'm awake, what are we going to do? Your reaction is very sensitive, boy. Unfortunately, it's not what we want to do, but what I want to do with you. Don't worry, I won't do anything to you. I want to teach you and teach you everything I know. They are all taught to you, and you must work hard and study hard with all your strength. I don't quite understand this. The last thing that hit me during the battle of the outer wall was a curse that trapped my soul in my body. I was not dead, but I was not alive. My body became the curse of my soul. Cage. And everything my comrades have done to me has greatly prolonged this process, but no matter what, my soul will gradually weaken due to this curse, and you will be lucky or unlucky. You will not be affected by this curse, so when my soul dies, you will survive alone in my body. I don't know what will happen to you after that. You will be imprisoned forever, or wake up. No matter which point, it is not a lucky thing for you, and we must prepare for the latter. I don't quite understand. My thoughts are a little confused. Things are too strange. Li stopped talking, thought for a moment, and then said, let me sum it up. What you mean is that you are going to die, and I will replace you, so you have to educate me in advance so that I can continue to serve your emperor instead of you. Yes, that's it. Whether I will continue to work for your emperor instead of you in the future, or whether I will continue to be imprisoned, it will be an unfortunate thing for me. Not an emperor in the ordinary sense as you understand it, but a divine emperor who belongs to mankind. Robert said seriously, in your previous world, the emperor was just a person standing at the top of the ruling class. But in this world, my world is different. The emperor not only rules the empire, but is also a savior, leader, and prophet. His power surpasses even all the gods in history. Without the emperor, mankind would not be able to win the Great Renaissance, and this world would still be alive. The reason why humans can still stand in the dangerous galaxy is because of the great god emperor. Okay, our emperor. Li didn't know the emperor now. He had never felt the great will, nor had he heard the legendary stories like the Bible, so he could respond with a relaxed attitude and shrugged indifferently. So back to my question, it is my misfortune to continue to be imprisoned by your body, but why is it also misfortune to continue to work for our god emperor? This is not an easy job, Robert smiled, with both fatigue and pride in his smile. If you go out in the future, you will know. As an Astarte monk, we are powerful, perfect, and have eternal life, but it also requires many sacrifices. Li was stunned, then shook his head and laughed, are you kidding? Why should I do these things at your mercy? Because you are an outsider, you must understand that as long as I have a thought, you will disappear in terrible pain. After saying this, Robert just snapped his fingers, and Li fell convulsingly. On the ground, unimaginable pain hit Li in an instant. I can make you experience unimaginable pain and torture, Robert said coldly, so you'd better know how to obey and respect. Now, hurry up, stand up, you have wasted 1,000 years, there is no more time for you to waste. First, you have to read all the books here. Chapter 6. How could this happen? Aelin looked at the mentor in the silver coffin in astonishment. He couldn't believe that his mentor would become like this. Anger burned in his chest, but he quickly suppressed it. I need an explanation, a reasonable explanation, otherwise. The servant next to him could hardly help but began to tremble. His mechanical arm made a clanking sound as it hit his body. We don't know either. This is too strange. This lord should not change when lying in the altar, but he... Please wait a moment. This happened before the rebellion. I am just a new servant. I need to check some information. Corrida, no need to check. You are not qualified to check the information of this lord at your level. Let's go. An old man walked out from the depths of the hall. He waved his hand to drive away the servant named Corrida. The old man came to Aelin and bowed slightly. He bowed and said, Sir, I am Eustace, the High Priest of the Holy Spirit Hall. Everything here is under my jurisdiction. Is there anything I can do for you? Of course, Arlen said in an unquestionable tone, I want to know what happened to the person lying in this silver coffin, and how did it become like this? Eustace glanced at the number of the silver coffin lightly, and then asked, Can I ask what is your relationship with the Lord sleeping here? I used to be his apprentice, and he will always be my mentor. I see. High Priest Eustace glanced at Arlen's chest, which was full of medals, Chaos Hunter medal, Angel of Death medal, Satan's Gate medal, Hellfire Silver medal, some of which are rare medals that can only be obtained by hunting thousands of chaos monsters, and some medals represent that this person has participated in those famous and difficult battles and has outstanding performance in the battles. Needless to say, after 1,000 years, Aelin has become an outstanding combat hero. He has traveled across multiple galaxies and participated in countless epic battles. The number of enemies who died in his hands is countless. It is normal for the Corrida servant to tremble in fear in front of such a warrior. If the sleeper knew that he had such an apprentice, he would be very pleased, but please suppress your anger and lower your voice, the old priest said softly, after all, this is the Holy Spirit Hall. Aelin nodded. Of course, he knew where this place was and also knew the rules here. The Holy Spirit Hall is where the Empire stores the heroic spirits of the Empire. There are many coffins of various colors, silver, bronze, black iron, and various coffins lined up the entire wall. Those who can lie here are all heroes who have made great contributions to the Empire. Some of them saved a planet by themselves, some have outstanding wisdom and genius battle command talents, and some have made great contributions to the Empire in some aspects. In short, all those who can lie in the Holy Spirit Hall are the elites among the elites of the Empire. They have made immeasurable contributions to the Empire, but at some unfortunate moment, their lives are threatened. Perhaps it is some incurable disease, or perhaps it is a fatal and irreparable trauma. In short, for various reasons, they will inevitably die. And this will undoubtedly be a heavy loss for the Empire. These people are too outstanding. When they were alive, they used their talents to create countless victories and values for the Empire. Even if they lie in coffins, their excellent genes are also precious wealth of the Empire. Their death will be an unbearable loss for the Empire. In order to recover or minimize this loss, the Holy Spirit Hall was born. The various coffins here are not simple coffins, but countless small terminals connected to the huge time solidifier. It is difficult for people lying in these coffins to feel the passage of time. Due to the power of technology, the time in the coffin is not at a normal flow rate, but it is not completely stopped. The Empire is not yet able to stop time completely, but it flows slowly in an extremely slow way. Perhaps the Empire will find a way to treat these people thousands of years later, and before that, they can only sleep in the Holy Spirit Hall. So although these people are seriously injured and cannot live, they are precious to the Empire and cannot die. The old man took out a data board and pressed it. Cursors and text appeared on the data board. After reading it, the High Priest Eustace said carefully, although you have the right to know the condition of your mentor, I must tell you before I say it that your mentor's physical condition is also a secret of the Empire. It involves many secrets of the Empire. Please keep your mouth shut to the outside world. Of course I know this. That's good, please look here, look at this signature. Aelin glanced at the place where Eustace pointed, and his mouth opened wide in an instant, and he couldn't close it for a long time. This battle hero who once faced hundreds of powerful chaos soldiers without changing his face showed an expression that had never appeared in thousands of years. Aelin was too surprised. The high priest waited for a while until Ailan recovered a little before continuing, as you can see, that is the autographed photo of His Majesty the Great Emperor. I believe you know the meaning of this. Your mentor, the physical condition of the distinguished Robert E. Lee was judged by the Emperor himself after personal inspection. His omniscient Emperor informed us everything that your mentor suffered was not an ordinary injury, but a terrible one. The curse. Curse. Ailan was a little panicked. This evil word made him a little uneasy. I don't understand. I was on the battlefield with my mentor during that battle. After the war, they only told me that my mentor was cursed. I was seriously injured, but no one ever told me it was a curse. Because confidential documents have a time limit, if you had been 50 years earlier, you would not have had the right to know these things. As Eustace said, he pressed the panel in his hand again, and the two of them, the silver coffin in front of him floated with his operation, and the outer material of the silver coffin changed. After a while, the entire coffin became as transparent as glass, and Robert Lee's body was unreservedly displayed to the two of them. In front of. Look, the high priest said, pointing to the body in the transparent coffin, Sir Robert Lee's body has undergone some changes since it was delivered, but one thing has not changed at all, that is, from his body there was no external injury on the body. What caused Sir Robert Lee to fall was not bleeding or an irreversible illness. Sir Robert Lee did not fall because of an ordinary attack. Not only that, but Robert Lee fell. The scars left by Mr. Lee in the previous battle are also gradually fading. You should have noticed that Mr. Robert Lee's body is unusually smooth. Such a body is not like that of a warrior who has experienced hundreds of battles. Like the bodies of those idle nobles, and more importantly, the bodies of adults have continued to, shrink in the past 1,000 years, please forgive me for using this word, but that's the fact. Ailan could naturally see that these were the reasons for his initial anger. According to common sense, the people lying in the coffins of the Holy Spirit Church are in a relative stagnation of time. After thousands of years, their bodies will not change at all, but now his mentor, Robert Lee's body has been in the coffin of the Holy Spirit Church for 1,000 years, but it has begun to shrink. Looking at Robert E. Lee's body, Ailan couldn't help but sigh, the word shrunk was so appropriate. Robert Lee was originally a giant man with a height of 3.1 meters. This giant-like height is very common among the Space Marines. Among the Space Marines, even the smallest scouts have two heights. Me sans height, not to mention those combat team members. To ordinary people, every Space Marine is like a strong giant. It must be mentioned that the minimum standard is far more than 2 meters, and the average height of 3 meters is not the normal height of human beings. The reason why these knights galloping in the sea of stars are so tall is not because they are born this way, but man-made. Almost all Star Marines have undergone cruel body modifications. After being implanted with excellent genes, a Space Marine's body will undergo 19 major surgeries. They will have steel-like bones, 3 lungs to provide them with more oxygen, 2 stomachs to allow them to eat most poisonous food, and 2 hearts to allow blood to flow more powerfully throughout the body. Space Marines who have completed body transformation can easily eat poisonous or even radiation-contaminated food. Their bodies are stronger and sturdier. Every Space Marine has special characteristics under the skin. Made of special plastic carapace, their modified skin is even stronger than body armor on Earth. For the Empire, the Space Marines themselves are valuable weapons, and now, the mentor Robert Lee, who was once the best warrior in the Raven Guard Regiment and was the best at close combat, is gradually shrinking. He is now only 2 feet tall. Me, the mentor's body was once covered with all kinds of scars, but for soldiers, these scars are not only not ugly, but also full of glory and memories. Each scar represents a tragic battle and a touching story. These scars' injury is a medal engraved on the body that cannot be taken off. But now these scars have faded away, leaving only skin that is as smooth as a woman's. This change is heartbreaking for everyone who sees it. Chapter 8. These changes are also caused by curses, High Priest Eustace said. The great emperor told us that your mentor was hit by the curse from Slaanesh. This is your mentor's misfortune. But it is the luck of mankind. Slaanesh. Elin couldn't believe his ears. As an old man who survived the emperor's era, although he still maintained fighting on the front line, this did not mean that he was just like an ordinary marine. Only knows how to fight. In the hierarchy within the empire, Elin already has relatively high functions and permissions. This status allows him to know some knowledge and secrets that ordinary warriors cannot have access to. You mean that Slaanesh If there were two Slaanesh in the universe, we would be in trouble. Eustace nodded and said, when it comes to the name Slaanesh, it is the only one who controls happiness and joy in the chaotic space. The fallen evil god, one of the four evil gods, has obvious signs of controlling Slaanesh. We should have expected it earlier. Eustace sighed and then continued, after the Great Rebellion. The Emperor told us the truth. These secrets involve some high-level secrets, and these secrets will be open to you today, but you have to understand that these things are still inaccessible secrets to the people. I understand the confidentiality rules. Very good, Eustace said now. During the Great Rebellion 1,000 years ago, War Master Horus was seduced by the evil gods from the Chaos Plane and betrayed the Emperor. Before the rebellion, he was blessed by four evil gods. Slaanesh, Kern, Tseanch, and Nurgle all gave Horus blessings and power. Two of them specially gave Horus 2 spells to summon him. 2 powerful curse attacks were launched, one of which was used to deal with Sanguinius. He was the most perfect and powerful among the many sons of the Emperor. As long as Sanguinius was around, the Emperor's throne would be as solid as a rock. Another powerful spell was used to fight against our omnipotent Emperor. However, things did not go as smoothly as Horus expected. His Excellency Robert Lee used his body to protect Sanguinius at the critical moment. The curse given by Slaanesh did not work as it should have, and everyone knows what happened afterwards. After explaining it like this, you should understand what contribution your mentor has made to the Empire. The entire human race would like to thank you. Mentor. Elin was stunned. Of course he knew what happened next. At the last moment of the Great Rebellion, the Emperor and Sanguinius boarded Horus's battleship. Horus directly used a powerful spiritual power to kill Sanguinius. Si was tortured to death, but was later defeated by the Emperor. Although the Emperor won the final victory, there was no doubt that it was a tragic victory. The Emperor also suffered heavy losses in the battle with Horus. After the battle, he returned to the Golden Throne, which was the same as the Holy Spirit Church. The coffin was a special device that kept the Emperor alive but could not revive him. To this day the Emperor cannot leave his Golden Throne. To a certain extent, the Emperor is like the Holy Spirits of the Holy Spirit Church. To the Empire, they are all seriously injured and cannot live, and they are too precious to die. If you think about it this way, if you don't have your own mentor, then the curse that tortured Sanguinius to death will befall the Emperor. If the Emperor is hit by such a curse, and there is a powerful Horus in front of him, then the final victory will be. It's hard to say if it's negative. But why didn't my mentor after being cursed by Slaanesh? Elin organized the words in his mind, and he didn't know how to say such words. He was not tortured to death like Sanguinius, did not develop strange symptoms, and did not fall into distortion. These are the things you want to ask. That's pretty much what it means, Elin said with some embarrassment. After all, it was a curse from the evil god. Even if my mentor was very powerful, even Sanguinius was tortured to death under such a curse. But my mentor can still lie here peacefully? Because the curse comes from different evil gods, the high priest explained. The evil god Kern dominates violence and killing. His power is full of violence and pain. Even Sanguinius can only be tortured under his power. Death, but Slaanesh is completely different. Slaanesh is in charge of pleasure and corruption. The methods of this evil god are completely different from Kern. Although your mentor did not fall immediately, the pain he experienced was no more than that of Saint Gilliam. The power of Slaanesh makes Lord Robert Lee's body a prison and his soul a prisoner. Lord Robert's body will be irreversibly weakened by the curse, and so will his soul. Even the stagnation of time cannot prevent the deterioration of this process. After many years, Lord Robert may wake up or die under the power of the curse, but no matter what, Lord Robert will not be around at that time. He is a powerful warrior. This is so despicable. This voice came from deep in Ilan's throat, and he was going crazy. It was not for any other reason, but because Ilan was also a warrior, and he understood what a warrior was thinking. Warriors loyal to the Emperor are not afraid of dying on the battlefield. On the contrary, they are happy to do so. Death on the battlefield is regarded by the warriors as the final destination of glory. But it would be an absolute shame to die on a certain bed with a thin body. There is nothing more detestable than to rob a warrior of his honor. Killing a lion and pulling out its claws and teeth and letting it starve to death on the grassland are two completely different concepts. The evil in the depths of the universe is much darker than we imagine. Whenever Lee opens a book, he opens a memory. The human brain is a very special thing. The knowledge learned will not be forgotten. The so-called forgetting is just that you can't find the knowledge stored there for a while, so the phenomenon of not being able to remember it for a while will appear. All the knowledge and memories of Robert Lee in his life are presented to Lee in the form of books, allowing him to read them. In this world composed of pure spirit, there is nothing else to do. If you don't want to be driven crazy by boredom, then the only way is to find something to do for yourself, so even if Robert Lee didn't ask him to, Lee would go to read those books. The first thing he read was books related to the world and history. Lee, who entered this world, was curious about the new world. Although he didn't look forward to the day when he could wake up in Robert's body, who knew if this would really happen? Even though I couldn't see this strange world with my own eyes, it was a wonderful and pleasant thing to see it through Robert's memory. When Lee found the corresponding bookshelf and flipped through it, he saw beautiful characters that he didn't recognize, but the strange thing was that even though Lee didn't recognize a single word, he could still understand the meaning of the book, and that knowledge was naturally presented to Lee. A brand new world. If humans in Lee's world were just toddlers, then in this world, humans are already strong men entering middle age. In Lee's original world, humans only had a total of 5,000 years of civilization history, but in this world, humans have a history of 40,000 years. What a heavy history! In the history of this world, humans were once the most powerful species in the universe. In the Golden Age, humans initially mastered the subspace navigation method, which enabled humans to cross long distances. At that time, human footsteps covered most areas of the galaxy, and human colonies were spread throughout the starry sky. But soon humans tasted the horror from the universe. A huge subspace storm swept the entire galaxy. The deadly storm blocked the subspace navigation, which caused the huge country to fall apart in an instant. The colonists who were cut off from the path of civilization gradually lost their civilization under the scour of time and were gradually assimilated by the natives, while more colonies disappeared in the universe for various reasons. It was a turbulent era: civil war, rebellion, looting and invasion of alien races, all of which tore the human world apart, and humans were almost on the verge of extinction. And all this changed until the appearance of the Emperor. It was a glorious era belonging to the Empire and His Majesty the Emperor. The great Emperor conquered the Earth and reached an alliance with the mechanical manipulators of Mars. The storm of the subspace finally passed, and the road of jumping navigation was unimpeded again. His Majesty the Emperor built the Light of the Stars and created the Interstellar Legion. Under his leadership, the 200-year-long crusade brought the human world together again. Strange planets were conquered, abandoned colonies were rebuilt, and the Empire led humanity to rise again in the galaxy. It was a legendary era. Mighty heroes fought for the power to rule the galaxy. The Earth Emperor's huge army conquered the stars in the Great Crusade. Countless alien races were slaughtered and erased from history by the Emperor's elite warriors. Humanity ushered in a new era of hegemony, and the dawn of the Golden Age was just ahead. Castles built of marble and gold shone brightly, praising the Emperor's countless great victories. Triumphal ceremonies held on millions of planets recorded the great achievements of his strongest and most deadly warriors. Chapter 10. The greatest of them all were the Primarchs, the sons of the Emperor. Extraordinary beings who have led the Emperor's Space Marine legions from victory to victory. They are unstoppable, they are flawless, they are the ultimate product of the Emperor's genetic experiments. The Space Marines are the most powerful human warriors known in the galaxy, each capable of defeating 100 in combat. Thousands of Space Marines gathered into legions, led by their Primarch, to conquer the stars in the name of the Emperor. The leader of the Primarchs was Horus. He is called the Glorious One, the Shining Star, the Emperor's favorite. He was treated as one of his own by the Emperor. He is the War Master, chief commander of the Emperor's armies, arbiter of millions of planets, conqueror of countless worlds. He is an unparalleled warrior and an unparalleled diplomat. And all this happened due to Horus's rebellion. Why can War Master Horus be in charge of half of His Majesty the Emperor's military strength? Lee asked in confusion. Although I understand your respect for the Emperor, I still feel that this is His Majesty's mistake. His Majesty the Emperor should have ways to restrict it. Of the frontline troops. It is not that he completely controls half of the military power, but Robert does not want to discuss these matters. His Majesty the Emperor trusts his sons, and War Master Horus is the most trusted by the Emperor among his many sons. Robert Lee replied, and the war you see is not the same as what you see on Earth. In general, the modern wars experienced by the world, the army is under absolute control. No, it is completely different from your wars. Most of the wars belonging to the Empire do not take place on a planet, or even in a galaxy. That is an expedition. The location of the war is far away from the mainland of the Empire. This distance is measured in light years. It is not something that someone like you who has not even left the Earth can imagine. The distance makes the control of the rear weak, and the war situation is changing rapidly, and the only ones we can rely on are the generals at the front. To put it bluntly, it is like in the era of cold weapons, when senior officials far behind are facing distant enemies. It will only make things worse if you don't make decisions on the battlefield, so you must trust the generals. Of course, in the cold weapon era, we rode on horses, and we rode on starships. They had to march thousands of miles, and we had to cross tens of thousands of lights year. I understand. Li nodded and then asked, so was Horus's rebellion successful? How is it possible? His Majesty the Emperor is invincible, Robert Li said seriously. I know you don't believe it. That's because you have seen too little. When you see all my battle memories, you will understand that the Emperor His Majesty has become stronger. When His Majesty the Emperor appears on the battlefield, it means the end of the battle. No creature in the universe can resist the great power of His Majesty the Emperor, even the gods in the world can only do so. Serving under the flag is the highest honor for a soldier. Robert Li's face showed a thoughtful expression unique to the old man. He was recalling, immersed in the glory of the past, you can't imagine days like that, one after another. One victory after another, there are countless glory. The God Emperor has led us to win countless glory. We will completely exterminate all the alien creatures we see and nip all crises in the bud. Humanity will be the only master in the galaxy. Being able to serve the Emperor is the highest honor for a warrior. Is there any more convincing evidence besides the fact that the God Emperor is very powerful? Of course. If Horus wins in the end, then we won't be talking here. Why? Because a normal person's body, even my body that has been surgically modified, cannot last for thousands of years without being damaged. If my body was not stored in the Holy Spirit Hall, we would have been doomed long ago. Seeing that Li was still interested in asking questions, Robert Li quickly continued before Li could speak. As for the knowledge related to the Holy Spirit Church, you can check it out by yourself later. Now let's put down the books and study. Something really useful. What do you mean by something really useful? In an instant, a set of huge black armor appeared on Robert Li's body, and the crow's claws with cold light popped out of his fists. The really useful thing is of course fighting. In this universe full of dangers, nothing is more useful than fighting. With that said, Robert Li couldn't wait to rush towards Li. Robert's huge figure was so fast that before Li could even react, the steel claws had mercilessly pierced his heart. The fatal coldness and powerlessness spread from Li's chest in an instant, and at the same time, the feeling of death slowly came over. Why? Li didn't understand. Don't look at me so resentfully, Robert shrugged nonchalantly and retracted his steel claws. I just wanted to say hello to you, but I didn't expect you to be weaker than I thought. It's a shame that you still have so many powerful fighting skills in your mind. Okay, get up. The feeling of death and cold came in an instant, but left in an instant. Li touched his body in panic. Am I okay? Remember, we are in the spiritual space, and the body has no real meaning. How can we be hurt by a sharp blade? But I just felt that feeling. The feeling of having my heart pierced and death approaching, Robert shrugged and said, that's not your feeling, but mine. I'm just sharing my past experience with you. Remember this feeling, and don't let it find you again. This is what we're going to work towards in the future. Well, okay, your heart was pierced before. Well, it was a dangerous battle. If it weren't for the surgery that gave me 2 hearts, I would have died on that wild planet. Okay, let's not talk about these things, let's talk about you. Although he is just an ordinary person, he is too weak. His reaction, will, and combat experience are almost zero. How could this be? I clearly saw many powerful combat skills in your memory, and your nation is also proud of its powerful combat skills. Ahem, what you saw should be mostly fictional artistic creations in martial arts novels. Those things are just a concept. I am a pacifist. That won't do, Robert shook his head and said, you'd better give up that delusion. There is no such thing as peace in the cold universe. You have to remember that all peace is just an interval between wars. Fortunately, we have enough time. I can give you good training and education. From now on, you have to call me mentor. What do you want to do? Forget it this time, Robert said calmly, watch your words, apprentice. Okay, mentor, what do you want to do? You are too weak, so weak that you are almost of little value to the empire. So if you want to replace me, then I need to train you, teach you, make you stronger, and then be able to better serve the emperor. Don't worry, I am a member of the Raven Guard. Melee instructor, my guidance is not something that anyone can enjoy. First, let's start with the basics. We need to know our weapons, Robert said, and the armor disappeared from his body. He changed into a light casual outfit. He raised his hands. Robert's hands were covered with a pair of cold steel claws. This is the Crow Claw, the standard weapon of the Crow Guard. Robert raised his hands and put them in front of his eyes, letting the claws on his hands intersect, and then unfolded. The sharp steel claws rubbed against each other and made a sharp metal friction sound. Just hearing this sound made people feel the power of the claws. Our weapons are sharp and deadly, and most importantly, they are short and convenient. If it is to kill people, then there is nothing better than these claws. Okay, the weapon explanation ends here, and now we will start training combat skills. There are not many tricks in combat skill training. Robert first began to explain how to use the claws in words, and then the two of them fought and felt it with their bodies. In the space of will, the two were not afraid of injury and death, and Robert would naturally not hold back. Fortunately, for the sake of fairness, Robert consciously shrunk his body and controlled his strength. But even so, the result was often that Lee was torn to pieces by Robert's claws in an instant. Then Robert would explain to Lee how he had just attacked, and how Lee should defend against such an attack, and then the two continued to fight, and Lee continued to be torn to pieces. Chapter 11. There is no day and night in the space of consciousness, and there is no concept of time. Robert's initial calculation of time was entirely based on sensory calculations, but when the estimated time reached 1,000 years, Robert gave up on this calculation. So for Robert and Lee, time is meaningless. They neither need to eat nor sleep. They take a short break when they feel tired, and then continue to study after the break. Lee's study involves all aspects. Robert is determined to teach Lee everything he knows, from the initial history of the empire to the empire's writing and discourse, as well as various customs and culture of the empire, and Lee also he is constantly absorbing this new knowledge like a sponge absorbing water. After all, this is the only thing that can be done in this boring space. The study of cultural classes does not take too long. When Robert feels that the study of cultural classes is enough, he will start teaching martial arts classes. At first, Robert only taught Lee to fight with two claws. Under the continuous high pressure, Lee made obvious progress, and soon he was gradually able to withstand Robert's attacks. Very good, you already understand the basic use of steel claws, Robert said, although you are stupid and learn slowly, it doesn't matter, we have more time anyway. Okay, here comes my favorite part. The part is also a steel claw, but it is completely different from the previous one. You have to pay attention. What I am going to teach you now are the martial arts from the Raven, the only leader of the Crow Guard and the Emperor's loyal son. And the combat skills of the founder of the Crow Guard. Are you saying that everything I learned before was just basics? Certainly. After that, there were continuous battles and torture. It was only then that Lee gradually understood how powerful Robert was, and as the study progressed, this understanding became more profound. Robert's fighting skills can no longer be described as skills. It is more like a work of art. Different from ordinary works of art, this work of art is completed by deadly, precise, and ferocious harvesting of the enemy's life. As Robert always said, the crows would not waste time ripping open the chests of their enemies if they had the chance to sink their deadly claws into their hearts. His battles are often like this, without too many fancy moves. His attacks are fierce and fast and go straight to the enemy's vital points. He inherited the fighting skills from Raven and was honed through the blood and fire of countless battlefields. Simple and effective, it is a complete killing technique. Physical activity is followed by tactical literacy training. Combat literacy is often more important than combat skills, Robert said to Lee. In the Empire, different space battle groups often have different traditions and their own unique fighting methods, regardless of as for others, what our Crow Guard is best at is assassination, operations behind enemy lines, and destruction. Once we have the opportunity, we will directly destroy the enemy's core. Decapitation is our most commonly used tactic. There is no need for us to confront the enemy head-on. There is no need to use arduous battles to prove our strength, and there is no need to get too entangled with the enemy. It is our duty to deal with the opponent cleanly. Li nodded his head, and he agreed very much with this. Robert continued, because of this, combat literacy is particularly important for our Crow Guard soldiers. When should we attack decisively, and when should we lurk and create pressure on the enemy with our presence, when to wreak havoc to attract the enemy's attention, all of these will be choices faced by a frontline commander, and each choice will be extremely difficult because the enemy is where you will most often appear in the battle. In the rear, you are surrounded by enemies on all sides. You were born to be surrounded by enemies. Your situation will always be like this, surrounded by dangers and dangers at every step. At this time, a single wrong decision will lead to the destruction of your entire team. This will have a very bad impact on the entire campaign, and many brothers will lose their lives because of your choices, so you must first learn to collect intelligence and make correct judgments. Then there is the sub-course under the combat literacy course, how to torture the enemy in order to quickly obtain the information you want. Fingers are one of the many sensitive and fragile organs of human beings. Breaking a finger can effectively break the enemy's will. It is also very convenient. Come and try it. Robert stretched out his hand and motioned for Li to break his fingers. Li did not hesitate. He was happy to hurt his mentor's body. This was a kind of psychological compensation for himself who had been torn into pieces countless times. He stretched out his hand and decisively broke Robert's finger with a pop. The voice sounded so crisp and refreshing. Li just started to feel happy in his heart, and then he was knocked down by a punch. No, that's not right. You move too fast. The opponent can't even feel the pain. You know, breaking the finger of an insignificant enemy is not our goal. We are behind enemy lines now and lack the intelligence we need. So we should strike the enemy's will and make him feel scared. Pain can help us. Now stand up and do it again. Slowly. Yes, good. You made me feel something. This is a lack of technique. Oh my God, don't be so rough. You have to remember that you are torturing people, and this is a delicate job. Of course there are psychological tactics, but this is based on the understanding of the enemy. First of all, you have to understand the opponent's culture and customs. You can study these things yourself when you have time, but believe me, it's a waste of time. The universe is full of creatures that are not kind to humans, but the Emperor's enemies will never exist for a long time. When you understand the enemy's culture and customs, they may be on the verge of extinction. And so on. Li and Robert studied and taught, day and night, and the two were fully engaged and enjoyed it. Time passed quickly, but it seemed that it didn't pass. After the first round of learning, Li understood most of what Robert knew, and was proficient in assassination, poisoning, torture, intimidation, and blasting. At the same time, Li learned all the means of transportation that Robert had seen. If we only look at the work behind enemy lines, Li is confident that he is no worse than 007, at least 007 can't drive a space shuttle. And Li is also outstanding in combat. He completely inherited the fighting style of Raven. His claws waved like ghosts, and the cold light was hard to defend against. He could even fight Robert on equal terms. And he completely learned the use and maintenance methods of various types of power armor of the Empire, from Thunder Power Armor, Expedition Power Armor, to Terminator Armor. Li even learned the basic repair and maintenance of power armor. Moreover, from the perspective of tactical qualities, which Robert valued most, Li did even better than he expected. Whether it was military chess deduction or retrospective analysis of the battles Robert had experienced, Li could always come up with some ideas that Robert had never thought of, and he could also explain them clearly. I have to say that you have done a good job during this period. This is all due to the good teaching of the instructor. What should we do next? Well, I don't know. Robert sighed, and the biggest enemy in the long time appeared again, that is, boredom. Why don't we start over again? What? Li didn't understand. I said, let's start over again. I teach, you learn, Robert said. Of course, we won't talk about some basic and messy knowledge, this time we will focus on fighting. Well, yes, you are still very lacking in fighting. You want to inherit my name and body, but it's not enough to have only this much power. After all, I am Robert Li. Chapter 13. But in the fight between me and my mentor, I have been able to remain undefeated. And the so-called undefeated is just a considerate way of saying it. Li thought to himself, if we really want to calculate the results, my own winning rate it should be higher. Invincible? Are you kidding me? Do you really think you can fight against a mentor-level figure of the Space Marines? Don't underestimate people. I am the Emperor's Knight, a warrior galloping across the stars. You fought me so well because I gave in to you." With that said, Robert's body became taller again in Lee's eyes. That was the first time Lee met Robert. The appearance of a cheap tutor, more than 3 meters tall, and a body like a giant. In order not to take advantage of you, I have been fighting you with a height and strength similar to yours, but now, in the second round of learning I will fight you with my original strength and body. Lee was helpless. "Teacher, do you want to teach me? Or are you just boring and tormenting me?" At times like this, men should stop talking with their tongues and mouths. Robert raised his fist and said, "Let the battle and the body do the talking." So the second round of learning began. In an instant, Lee felt like he had turned back into that young boy from Earth who didn't understand anything. Under Robert's steel claws, he was like a beginner who had never fought before. He was often defeated in just one encounter. Shred. Not only that, Robert also participated in Lee's cultural studies. At first, Robert didn't care much about Lee's study of culture and knowledge. He just let Lee go to the vast library to read any books he was interested in. But this time it was completely different. Robert seemed to suddenly finding the joy of being a cultural communicator. He started cultural counseling and education for Lee. The first is language learning. Fortunately, although the Empire is vast, 99% of the planets use Slow Gothic, the common language of the Empire, which is a language between French and English. The language has beautiful pronunciation and is more colloquial to the people. Generally speaking, it is not too difficult to learn. But even so, it almost killed Lee. Language learning has always been Lee's weakness. From junior high school to college, Lee lost a lot of hair and came up with many crooked ideas in order to pass the English course. As a result, I am now unlucky enough to fall into another world and have to learn a foreign language. However, complaints are complaints, learning is still inevitable. After Low Gothic came the even more devastating High Gothic language, a more standardized and complex aristocratic language that was also the official language. As a result, when Lee's language knowledge was completed, the progress of combat training was still very small. Facing Robert, who was as tall as a giant and with terrifying strength, Lee tried his best but was still completely helpless. No, I've tried my best, but how can I beat you like this?" Lee couldn't remember how many times he had been killed by Robert. This time it was pretty good, and he was cut off cleanly. What happened last time? Was it strangled to death with his arms or torn into 5 pieces with his crow's claws? Is this close combat training? Is it completely abused? Strength, speed, and even reaction are all far inferior to yours. How can I win under such circumstances? Let's talk about the battles you taught me. The method is all about risking one's life. If you want to avoid being killed by the enemy, you must kill the enemy first. How can I beat you in this situation? That's right. It seems that I've been beating you up and down easily. It's really not interesting. Robert thought for a while, then clapped his hands and said, "Let's do it this way. Now I'll teach you some real beating skills. Real spanking skills. Yes, in fact, this should be the basics that should be learned from the beginning. If you want to hit someone, you should first learn to be beaten. The first thing you must learn in melee combat is how to protect yourself from harm. Doesn't this rely on quick steps and dexterous dodging? Yes, if you can dodge the enemy's attack, you will naturally not suffer any damage, but you cannot dodge the enemy's attack every time. More often than not, you will not be able to dodge. At this time, you will need to be beaten. Skills? What posture and which part of the body to use to withstand the enemy's attack, these are all things that must be learned, and one-on-one fighting is rarely possible on the battlefield. In most cases, you have to learn. We are all in a chaotic battlefield, so learning how to get injured without losing combat effectiveness should be an important lesson for you. It's supposed to be. Robert shrugged his shoulders and said, "Although these things seem to be very useful, in fact they are not very useful. You should know that we Space Marines do not wear casual clothes to participate in battles, but we have power armor." Lee nodded. He had already learned how to wear it, just like the knight armor in the Middle Ages. Dressing some power armors of the Space Marines was not an easy task, and even simple repair of power armor, so for this kind of thing is naturally familiar. The so-called power armor is actually a kind of armor that is similar in appearance to medieval knight armor, a bit like the armor worn by machine gunners in the game StarCraft. This kind of armor can not only greatly enhance the protection of space warriors, but also further increase the warrior's strength and destructive power. There is no better protection than powered armor. You cannot be faster than lightning or beams. The enemy will always hit you. At this time, the only thing protecting you is the armor on your body. If the enemy attacks, if the protection of your power armor cannot be broken, then you don't need to care at all. If the enemy's attack tears your power armor, then it will be a violent attack, no matter which part of your body you use. The outcome of the incoming attacks is usually the same, so I always thought that these things are of little use, but now, you may be able to survive for a while after learning these techniques. So Li began to learn how to be beaten again, how to quickly choose between his lungs and kidneys when necessary, and how to let the knife penetrate his body with minimal damage. How to stop bleeding when a major artery is severed, and learn how to stay calm after your intestines fall out of your stomach and stuff them back into their proper positions. Fortunately, you can do this in a mental space where you don't have to worry about being injured at all. Learning couldn't be more convenient. Li quickly understood his own body well, and knew how to use one of his own injuries to exchange for the other person's life. Sometimes this was the fastest way. After this stage of teaching ended, Li's fighting style completely changed. If Li was as slippery as a loach before, and he tried his best to dodge all the enemy's attacks without letting himself suffer any damage, then now Li is a desperate character like Cheng Yaojin. It doesn't matter if you chop at me with a knife, I will also chop at your head with a knife. Let's see who can survive in the end. If it were a normal situation, Li would have been able to withstand it, because he deliberately chose the position where he was injured, and he predicted the injury he was about to receive the moment he took action. But the problem is that he is facing a powerful Space Marine mentor-level figure. In fact, even if Li learns this technique, his battle with Robert will not change at all. No matter which part of Li was hit by Robert, the powerful melee instructor would always completely crush him in an instant. Just like Robert said, when a bullet hits you, you can choose which part of your body is injured. The correct choice will minimize the damage you receive, but when a cannonball hits you, what about when? No matter how you choose at this time, it's the same. These skills become meaningless in the face of two powerful attacks. Oh my, this is really distressing. Regarding this matter, Robert was even more troubled than Li. What should I do? Isn't there an effective way? My body is already like that. If I continue, if you go down. Mentor, may I know what you are worried about? Of course, you should know that my body is gradually withering. Withered. Actually, it's not withered. This word is not accurate. Well, it's like this. Although I can't control the use of my body, I can still observe my body through some methods. After a long period of observation, I found that my body is gradually becoming ordinary. The power of the curse is transforming my body, weakening my bones and muscles. My second heart is facing necrosis, and the third lung and second stomach are also facing the same problem. The problem is that my body is gradually becoming ordinary. So I am thinking, what should you do if you wake up with my name and meet someone as powerful as me? If it is a traditional battle, you will die. Why do I have to fight those who are stronger than me? Because your opponents will not come out after you choose them. They always pop up suddenly and attack you. If you want to survive in this world and live long enough, then you should first remember the first thing is to be loyal to the Emperor and serve the Empire, and then to make yourself stronger so that you can better serve the Empire. Chapter 14. Robert thought hard for a long time, and finally he thought of a solution that was not a solution, that is, the Chinese martial arts in Li's mind. Those are mostly fictional, just some conceptual things. In fact, I don't understand martial arts at all. Even in my life, I have never seen a real Kung Fu master. Whether Kung Fu really exists is a question mark for Li. As long as there is a concept, it is enough. I will perfect the rest. Remember, I am a close combat instructor. The enemies I kill can form a legion. So Robert put all his combat experience and skills into the research of new combat skills. He deeply studied every video that Li had watched and every move he had seen, and then differentiated, studied, and finally put it into actual combat, and finally started to practice with Li. Although the relationship between the two is still that of master and apprentice, the two have changed from a simple teaching and learning to a mutual discussion and research between the two. Robert originally disdained the things in Li's mind. Kung Fu, to put it bluntly, is nothing more than the mastery of fighting skills. When this kind of fighting skills reaches a certain level, it is easy for martial artists to accomplish some things that seem magical to others. This is like the best waiter in a Western restaurant can tear the tablecloth off the table in an instant, and the tableware on the tablecloth remains motionless. It looks magical, but in fact it is the result of more practice, and its function is just to look beautiful. Robert does not need skills. His battles are all on the battlefield. What he needs to do is to kill the enemy in the simplest and fastest way, and he rarely challenges people who are stronger than himself. He is not a bored fighter who wants to hone himself. He is a warrior who fights for humanity and a soldier who kills. If the enemy is very powerful, then well, the heavy weapons team will come forward and beat the enemy into a sieve. Therefore, Robert has never studied the skills of fighting with the weak to defeat the strong in depth, and he never puts the enemy in the position of the strong and puts himself in the position of the weak. Because Robert has always been the strong one. But now the situation is a little different. Robert can clearly see the erosion of the curse on his body. His body has really become ordinary. In the future, Robert Lee will no longer have a tall body, a strong physique, strong muscles, and terrible power. In the future, Robert Lee may not even be able to wear power armor. So he must think of some ways, and for Robert, this is not just out of concern for Lee, but also for his own salvation. Because he can always clearly feel the erosion of the curse on his soul. If that erosion brings pain, it may be better. Robert is not afraid of pain. Pain is just a feeling for him. It is a feeling that can strengthen his will and make him more sober. But the curse does not bring pain, but pleasure, just like the pleasure of taking stimulants, like drugs, making people feel in heaven, as if the whole body is soaked in warm water, especially relaxed and comfortable. Being hit to death by this curse is not a painful process for the body, on the contrary, it is a process of enjoyment. But for the spirit, for the soul, for the will, it is a complete disaster. Robert is constantly fighting against this kind of happiness that comes from the depths of his soul, just like a senior drug addict fighting against his drug addiction. The wonderful pleasure constantly tempts him and makes him degenerate, and Robert must keep thinking and working, otherwise he will fall into the abyss of pleasure and become a slave who pursues pleasure purely. Fortunately, such a struggle does not need to last too long. Robert has felt that his soul is becoming weaker and weaker. As long as he persists until the moment of his death, he will win a chance. The curse will weaken with his soul. Robert firmly believes that even if his soul is weak, he still has a firm will and belief, so there is still a chance, and the final victory of this struggle will definitely belong to him. And what happens after his soul dissipates, let this last apprentice of his own. Now all Robert needs is some good things that can be used to kill time. He puts all his energy on these things and ignores the increasingly strong pleasure. Robert put himself into Chinese martial arts, such as slow to fast, Phoenix mouth fist, Tai Chi, military boxing, grappling, shadowless kick, Tathagata palm, 18 dragon subduing palms, and so on. He studied them carefully and finally figured out something. These things are still useful, Robert said. There are 3 basic elements of fighting: strength, speed, and skills. Among the 3, skills are the most useful and the most useless. People with skills can sometimes decide the outcome in an instant, but if there is no strength and speed to support them, no matter how many skills they have, their role is limited. However, if we have strength and speed, we often don't need too many skills, and skills are too demanding for learners and have no practical significance. Fortunately, we are in this space where we don't have to worry about getting hurt, and we have plenty of time, otherwise ordinary people may find it difficult to master these fighting skills in their lifetime. So, have you mastered it, mentor? I already understand, but I'm still a long way from mastering it. But I can teach you, and you'll master these things sooner or later. Robert said, in your country, the so-called martial arts, its core is still the skill of force. How to mobilize the whole body's strength in an instant, and then give the enemy a fatal blow at the enemy's weakest position, its core meaning lies in this. What-inch force, unloading force, soft force are all about the grasp of force. Whether it's war or fighting, it's the same, use your strongest blow to hit the enemy's weakest point. Advanced skills are always difficult to master, and it takes ordinary people 100 or 80 years to master them. What a pity! What do you regret? I regret that it's so good as fighting skills, but they cannot be promoted. After all, skills are always used by the weak, and only the weak need skills, because only in this way can they defeat the strong. The strong just need to become stronger, and the warriors of our empire will never be weak. The study continued day and night, and the two were unaware of the passage of time. Lee learned the skill that Robert thought was the most useless, single soldier unarmed combat. In Robert's opinion, if you lose your guns, weapons, and even cold weapons on the battlefield, it is almost impossible to lose all your weapons. If you really reach this point, then you are not far from death, and unarmed combat is completely out of the question. But Li was quite interested in such courses. When the fourth round of teaching ended, Li actually achieved good results in this course. After the last class, Robert patted Li on the shoulder and said with a smile, "I have nothing to teach you. You are the dumbest one among my many students, but also the best one. Don't talk now, just listen to me. In fact, I want to thank you. In the last days, I can still maintain my nature and not degenerate. It's all because of you. And I can leave without regrets because of you, because I know that even if my soul dissipates, you will continue to serve the Empire in my name. You also helped me make up my mind. Now I want to say goodbye to you forever, and then, you are Robert Li, I hope you will not bring shame to this name." "Teacher, you. What's that expression on your face?" Robert smiled. "Don't be sad, in this world, those who leave may not be unfortunate, and those who stay may not be lucky. I have lived too long and fought too long. Now I am leaving to participate in the last battle and face the most powerful enemy in history. I have escaped for too long, and it is time to avoid it. This battle will come sooner or later. Remember, wait a minute, you just need to watch, no matter what happens, don't intervene. This battle belongs to me, and you can't intervene in it. May my Emperor bless you, and may the Emperor protect me." Robert waved his hand, opened a door from the void, and walked out. Chapter 15. Then the entire world Li was standing on began to collapse and peel away, the bricks began to fall, the room began to collapse, the walls gradually dissipated, and finally the sky and earth outside the room were revealed. Li seemed to be weightless, floating in the air, looking down at the entire world. That's the world outside the door. This is a plain with no end in sight. The earth has no color, because human beings, alien creatures, various abnormal corpses and blood cover the entire plain, like a thick carpet made of corpses and dyed red with blood. There was unconcealable horror on Li's face. This scene was a bit too scary. "Is this hell?" Li asked. "It's not wrong," Robert replied, "but it's not wrong either. This is a battlefield. There will be a battle here later. The enemy is so powerful that I can't imagine, so I must do my best to meet the enemy. You have to do it yourself. Be careful. Keep the good thoughts in your heart and don't be tempted by evil. Her words are full of poison, and those evil thoughts will gradually corrode your heart, so don't believe any of her words." "Evil? What is evil?" A charming voice came from the underground, and then the corpses on the plain still swelled, eventually turning into a small hill. On the top of the hill made of corpses, a hexagonal crystal stone platform rises from it. In the center of the stone platform is a beautifully crafted gold throne, with shining jewels inlaid on the throne. The crystal table is hexagonal, with something jaw-dropping placed on each corner. The first corner is filled with all kinds of treasures. Gold coins like a mountain are piled up randomly. Dazzling rubies, opals, and fist-sized diamonds are scattered among them. A golden statue stands among them. Such wealth is enough for people are crazy about it. A long table was placed in the second corner. The long table was filled with a sumptuous banquet, mellow wine, roasted golden tender meat, fresh fish, fragrant soft bread, and all kinds of food that had been seen before. Just seeing this rich food makes people want to eat food that they have never seen before. But every once in a while, these foods will disappear and be replaced by a table of richer and more delicious food. In the third corner is a group of boys and girls whose necks are chained with iron chains. They have white and tender skin, soft bodies, and hot lips. They have almost perfect breasts. Everyone is slowly making various moves. The obscene movements, every body language is full of hints, their bodies are like a thirsty desert, and each of their eyes is full of seductive messages, which makes people's desire rise. The rear corners are in a fog, making it difficult to see clearly. A woman appeared in front of the throne. She had slender limbs, gentle and deep eyes, she was solemn and charming, her handsome face was intoxicating, and her elegant behavior was even more crazy. She was wearing a black silk dress. The long skirt was thin, and the flesh color could be faintly seen in it. Such thin clothes could not hide the alluring scenery under the silk, but made her even more alluring. She sat on the throne and said in a magnetic voice, "It is really stupid to simply divide the world into two, with justice on one side and evil on the other. Only children can view the world so simply. There are good people on one side, so the bad people on the other side. Don't silly, any adult knows that there is never any justice or evil in the world, there is only the grey in the middle, and respective interests. Robert Lee, are you right? Evil. Don't try to sway me with words. Don't you think you are ridiculous? Robert? You have been hiding for so long, building a castle with your heart to avoid my calls, covering your ears, not listening to my appeals, not seeing me, for so long, you have been avoiding me for so long that I can't remember how long it was. I was like a lost child, knocking on your door, but you were so cruel and never met me. But now we have just met, you. But you said these ruthless words to me. You are so afraid of me because you know that what I say is the truth of the world. I must admit that I couldn't compete with you at first. There was too much sex in my heart and I was afraid that I would become evil. Stop saying that word, it makes me laugh. The woman in black robe waved her hands and said, you just talk about evil and justice, but these things are completely unable to withstand deep thinking, cannot withstand scrutiny at all, and are even completely unacceptable. Reasonable. But why should we think about those boring things? Look at the wealth here, this brilliant gold, this dazzling jewelry. This is wealth that many mortals cannot get in their lifetime, but it is what you deserve. Come on, Robert, you fought for the Empire through life and death, you fought for the Empire all your life, you protected humans from other alien creatures, you eliminated many alien races, if it weren't for you, many people would be torn apart. Or become the excrement of some kind of animal. But after all you have done, what do you get? Except for your ridiculous armor, you have nothing. The woman shook her head and continued in a voice full of sorrow. They haven't given you anything. The officials of the Empire are living and drinking at home. They are squeezing the lower levels of society. The secret vaults store the huge wealth they obtain through corruption that ordinary people can't imagine. Not to mention those interstellar consuls. They control the life and death of ordinary people, and can execute people they dislike at will. They are like wild dogs in heat, and can overwhelm any woman at will. They are like gods on the planet, no, even gods. They follow their own rules, and they are even more unscrupulous than the gods. Not only them, but also their descendants will do the same. This is a power that relies on blood, but how ridiculous is it? To enslave other people for their power? Are these the people you are risking your life to protect? This is my responsibility. I don't have nothing. I have won honors in my position, and I still have faith in my heart. Honors? Medals? Those little iron plagues? Forget it, those are just some deceptive things, they are meaningless. As for faith, the woman smiled, and her smile seemed to be like an adult looking at the three of them. The smile of a 20-year-old child is the same, don't kid yourself, you have nothing at all. Oh? Then what can you give me? What do you want? Wealth? I have it. Look here. The woman in black robe walked to a pile of gold coins, held a pile of gold coins in her hands, then opened her hands and let the gold coins slip between her fingers. He fell into the pile of gold coins and made a crisp tinkling sound. Listen, this is the sound of the gold coins hitting each other. How sweet it is! As long as you are willing, these all belong to you. I can give you wealth. It will even allow you to live in a palace of gold, and even the toilet you use will be pure gold. A clumsy deception. These are just illusions and have no meaning. Oh, maybe. They are indeed different from what you think they are real, but look at these golds and touch these gems. I guarantee that they are exactly the same as what you have seen. The feel, texture, and crisp sound, you can get the same satisfaction and the same enjoyment, so why do you have to distinguish what is true and what is false? The woman in black robe looked at Robert, but the latter just smiled coldly. Full of mockery. She stopped suddenly, and then said with a sudden realization, oh, I don't like money, and I have no interest in wealth. What about delicious food? Try this dish. This is a fish caught from a depth of 30,000 meters under the sea. Whichever is the best. This plate made of a small piece of tender belly meat, and this wine, are so mellow, just smelling it is enough to make you intoxicated. Oh my God, if you don't enjoy these delicacies in your life, you will taste like this. What a pity would that be? The reason why I eat and drink is just to live, Robert said coldly, and I live to follow the raven and serve the God Emperor. Tisk tisk tisk, it's so pitiful. How did you live for so many years in such a gloomy life? What about women? Look at these beautiful girls, their bodies are so soft, listen to their moans, they long for you to enter their bodies. There are so many magical and happy things that men and women can do. You can play with them at will and enter their bodies from any place you like. You will like that kind of taste, and you will understand it once you try it. Oh, look at your expression, your face is terrible, do you not like women, so men? They raise their buttocks and open their little assholes. It can also make you feel the supreme beauty. You whore, shut up, Robert shook his hands, and the sharp crow's claws popped out of the gloves with a pop. He said fiercely, these tricks are of no use to me. I am not interested in your twisted falsehoods. I have no interest in being satisfied, so stop talking nonsense. You can't shake my mind. Pick up your weapons and let's have a good fight. Don't you like these people? Aren't they beautiful enough? The woman lowered her head regretfully, then she seemed to think of something, suddenly raised her head, and said happily, oh, I know. She clapped her hands and stood from behind the throne. Another person walked out. What about this person? Your sister, haven't you missed her for a long time? How did you secretly pay attention to her growth back then? You really want to see her under her clothes? Young body, how many times have you fantasized about your sister while using your hands to bring yourself happiness and satisfaction on the bed? Oh, although the ending is such a pity, in the end it was because of ridiculous justice and just because of ridiculous moral values? You have to leave her, stay away from your home, and embark on the battlefield of no return. Are you afraid that you can't control yourself? Oh, yes, you miss her, want to touch her breasts, and occupy her. Everything about her, pressed against her body, made her cry for your pain and moan for your pleasure. You were afraid that you would do this, so you left her. For a moment, Robert seemed to be petrified. He just looked at his sister blankly, his face full of horror, and then it turned into deep depression. Finally, he gritted his teeth and growled, no, it's impossible. This is fake. You can't fool me, you devil. Chapter 16. But the fact is that the words of the woman in black robe were like the sharpest sword, easily breaking Robert's armor and piercing deeply into his heart. Look at you, poor child. The woman in black robe left the throne, walked down the crystal stairs, walked to Robert, gently stroked his head, and said softly like a mother comforting her child, it's so sad. Indeed, you have reason to be sad. Because you know that what you saw is just an illusion and is false. Your sister died long ago when you were running around the galaxy to exterminate alien races. Lost. You participated in one great battle after another, destroying, crushing, and killing all the enemies that threatened mankind. But time is still passing by, and it will not go out of your way for you or your sister. Stay. You have an immortal body, and your sister is just an ordinary person. She cannot resist the power of time. She grows up, she ages, and she dies. Do you know that your sister also loves you all her life? She is not married, so she often sheds tears in her sleep. She thinks of you in her dreams, which is her only comfort in the long cold night. She is so lonely, and she can only imagine you in her before going to bed. Next to her, she used her fingers to soothe herself, gaining a false sense of satisfaction. But when she passed the peak and opened her eyes, she could only feel more empty. Strong, calm, wise, like a god, Robert, who had always been invincible, suddenly collapsed at this moment. He fell to his knees and let the sharp crow's claws fall off his hands. This giant did not know what fear was. It trembled like chaff. Robert almost collapsed. No, no. You lie. Lie. The hard power armor began to fall off Robert's body, revealing the body under the armor. You know my abilities, I won't lie to you, everything I say is true. The woman in black robe continued with a strange smile on her face, two sad lovers, they obviously love each other, but they can't be together. This is so tragic, even if I see it, I can't bear it. In fact, what will happen if you are together again? You will not hurt anyone. You just love each other. Is there anything wrong with love? What's the point of so-called morality? It's just a burden that binds you. Without it, you can be with your sister and you will live a happy life. But now, she lives a lonely life. The radiant skin turned into orange peel in the wind, her face disappeared, she died, disappeared forever, you only have regrets and cannot recover. Her life was unhappy and lonely. Self-blame and regret were like poison. As the woman's words penetrated into Robert's heart and entered his soul, no. This is all my fault? It's my fault. The strong breasts gradually shrank. Robert's tall body began to shrink. Although he didn't understand what happened, Lee in the air also knew that things were beginning to slip in a not-so-good direction. He wanted to scream, to warn Robert, but when he opened his mouth, no sound came out. Suddenly he thought of what Robert said before entering the battlefield. Robert seems to have known that this situation would happen. This is a battle that belongs to the mentor. Others cannot and should not interfere. You don't need to blame yourself too much. What really hurts you is the so-called morality and the so-called justice. Why can it be between strangers but not between brothers and sisters? It doesn't make sense at all. And those nobles are doing better than you. It's too much. They are even willing to have sex with their own pets after closing the door. The woman said seductively, so you have to relax and free yourself from the constraints. You don't need to worry too much and do what you like to do. What's wrong with liking wealth? Is there anyone in the world who doesn't like eating and drinking? What's wrong with enjoying a woman's body? Isn't it uncomfortable for you to do such and such things? You are happy, so why not be so demanding on yourself? You have given everything, but you have gotten nothing. Why can't you just relax and enjoy yourself? Enjoyment, what you can get here is only 1,000th compared to what you pay. You deserve more, so why not try your best to enjoy it? Don't you deserve it? It seems to be true. Robert raised his head with difficulty, looked directly at the woman in black robe, and continued through gritted teeth, unfortunately, it's all bullshit. At the same time, he bounced off the ground like a spring. Although he lost his power armor, weapons, and steel claws, and his body became weaker, the crow's claws were still deeply embedded in his faith, hidden in him. In his body, the sharp crow's claws pierced the skin on his fists and popped out from his bones. Robert waved his hands, and a sharp claw slashed across the black-robed woman's head, sending her whole head flying. His other hand clenched into a fist and hammered like a woman's heart. Before the fist could reach, the sharp claw struck out. It had pierced her heart, and then she felt a crazy stirring. In the blink of an eye, Robert decapitated the woman, stabbed her heart, and mashed it to a pulp. Just as Robert taught Lee, the crows would waste no time trying to tear their enemies' chests apart if they had the chance to sink their deadly claws into their enemies' hearts. Robert kicked away the body of the black-robed woman, and at the same time pulled out his sharp claws and gritted his teeth and said, I said, your little trick is of no use to me, devil, now you know the pain, right? I know you are not dead yet, say your name and let us continue to be close. It's really amazing. I thought it would be boring. The body of the woman in black robe just rolled to the ground. On the throne, another woman in black robe who was exactly the same appeared again, as if the one she had just killed was not someone else. She said, the result is such a surprise. He is indeed a mentor-level figure of the Crow Guard. He should not be underestimated. As for me, don't you know who I am? I'm not familiar with you demons at all. But I am very familiar with you. I know every fragrant dream you have. I know your pain, your unwillingness, your anger, everything about you. Can't you guess who I am? Before you, when I blocked the curse, I entered your body. Everything was as I expected, without exception. She smiled and said, some people call me Salish, and some people call me Shalish. Evil god Slaanesh. But here, you should know that I am not anyone else, I am you, I am Robert Lee, just like the two sides of the same coin, the curse of the evil god gives me strength and nourishment, and you. The dark side of my heart is the soil of my existence. I am you and you are me. We are indistinguishable from each other. I know all your desires and feel the resentment and anger in your heart. I am sad for your sadness because you are happy and crazy. Although we are on two sides, we are not enemies, but our own people. You said you are my other side? There is a demon hidden in my heart. There is a devil hidden in everyone's heart, it just depends on how we call it. Everyone has desires. Just imagine, a person without desires cannot love or hate because of jealousy. A person who will be satisfied by success and not empty by loneliness. This person has no emotions and is as cold as ice. Can such a person be considered a human being? What is the meaning of his life? Robert, the hypocrite you admire? The Emperor turned you into a machine that only knows how to kill, just for his inflated ambitions and perverted conquests. But I hope to help you find your true self and turn you into a person who knows how to love and enjoy life. Person. Become a real person. When I get out of my guard, everything is doomed, no matter how you talk, you can't change it. Robert said as he walked towards the throne on the top of the corpse hill. He held his head high and stepped on the crystal stairs without fear, walking up step by step. Walked calmly and firmly. It's ridiculous. I've said it before. I am you. How can you kill me? We are one. Don't you feel it? Every time you insert a sharp blade into my chest, you yourself will be killed. Weaken 1 point. If I die, you will die. Then let me die together. Robert roared and started to speed up. He ran wildly on the crystal stairs, turning a blind eye to the gold coins and delicious food at his fingertips. When the beautiful young girls blocked his way, he waved sharp claws cut these beautiful things into several pieces. It wasn't until the girl Robert called his sister stood in front of him that his claws stopped. Brother! Please, don't! You are so scary. I don't recognize you anymore. Please, come back. Become the brother who loves me again. My sister cried and begged. What a resemblance! Robert looked at the woman's face carefully and sighed, it's a pity you're not. Then he thrust out his fists, his sharp claws forward, piercing deeply into her chest, tearing her left and right, and then easily tear her apart completely. Blood and stumps were scattered all over the floor, and my sister's head rolled down the crystal steps. Robert didn't even glance at it. He moved on. Oh my God, look at your terrifying appearance. You can even kill your sister with your own hands. The woman in black robe shook her head and said regretfully, now, between you and me, who is more like a devil? Turn around. Robert, there is still a chance. As soon as she finished speaking, Robert rushed forward, his claws inserted from her eyes, and sharp claws emerged from the back of her skull. Then the sharp claws went down and divided her body easily, just like drawing lines on her body, starting from her head and cutting out between her legs. Chapter 17. In the blink of an eye, Robert kills the demon for the second time. He shook off the blood on his steel claws and said to the corpse, and you, devil, you don't have the slightest chance. What a pity. It's true. I didn't want to use force like a barbarian. You forced me to do so, Robert. The corpses on the ground stood up one by one. They all turned into her appearance, Slaanish's appearance, holding various weapons and swarming towards Robert. However, no one was his opponent. Robert returned in an instant. In the best state, the sharp claws fly, and finally turn into a silver afterimage, killing all the enemies around him. Only stumps and blood could be seen scattered everywhere. Countless Slaanish were cut into pieces and killed. They fell, but more stood up again. The battle started like this, but I don't know when it will end. It is like an eternal Shura field. Time has lost its meaning. There is only an eternal battle. No one knows how long this kind of massacre lasts. In Li's opinion, almost the earth all the corpses above stood up once, then fell down again after being dismembered. By this time, the battle seemed to be over. Robert stood on top of the corpse like a demon, covered in blood, and exuding a fierce murderous aura. Don't ever try to defeat me. Demon! He roared loudly, this is my heart and my territory. I am invincible here. I am tired of these tricks of yours, come out and let's fight openly. You are a madman. She crawled out from the corpse. At this time, all the solemnity and elegance on her face disappeared, leaving only ferocity and resentment. You can't defeat me. I am you, I know all your martial arts and every battle. How can a person defeat himself? Then come on, Robert raised his paws, let me feel how strong I am. Ha, she smiled, you are not smart, but you are really strong. She raised her hands, and her nails began to grow strangely, and finally glowed with a metallic light. She clearly knew every attack of Robert, his moves, his thoughts and his fighting mode. The same goes for him, they both know each other too well because they are the same person. Ordinary fighting is almost meaningless to the two of them. If they fight in a normal way, they will never be able to hurt each other, so both of them chose the most cruel fighting method at the first time. Without any more words, the two of them rushed towards each other and then bumped into each other. Robert punched out. This punch was so powerful that the crow's claw easily pierced her chest, and even his fist hammered into her chest. Then Robert used this hand to hold her tightly. Button. The other party also did the same thing. Her sharp claws were like sharp blades. One hand easily penetrated into Robert's chest and tightly held one of Robert's ribs. The two left hands pierced each other's right chest, and then fixed each other. Then there was a fierce attack on each other. He used his claws to stab, cut, and stir, trying to turn the other party into a pile of rotten meat, while she used her claws to dig, stab, and dig out, almost trying to turn the other party's body into pieces. All the flesh and blood were removed. The two of them were so close together, not dodging or stopping, but fiercely attacking each other non-stop, using fists, claws, legs, knees, teeth and foreheads, like a pair of the most hated enemies. Fight to the death. They were fighting in the most brutal way, with blood and pieces of flesh constantly splashing out from their bodies, and dull collisions one after another. Li held his breath and stared at the fight between the two with wide eyes, confused. It seemed like only a few minutes had passed, but it seemed as long as tens of thousands of years. The two men's attacks became slower and slower, more and more weak. Stop, stop, Robert, I ask you, no, I ask you to stop, you can't go on like this, the devil shouted weakly, if this continues, we will all die, why do you have to do this, that false emperor? What did you do that made you so crazy? But Robert didn't answer. He just mechanically raised his arm and slammed it, and the crow's claws penetrated the enemy. No, please, beg you, stop, stop. Robert, why are you so insistent? Why do you have to be so realistic? If you die, you will have nothing. If you can compromise, you can get what if eternal happiness is false? In your senses, those foods, women, and money will be indistinguishable from reality, and you will be very happy. Raising his arms vigorously, the crow's claws penetrated the enemy. Think about it, think about it. Which is more terrifying, never waking up from a dream, or always being awake and dreamless? Slowly raising his arms, the crow's claws penetrated the enemy. You are really stubborn. You are the most difficult and stubborn guy I have ever seen. Why are you making things so difficult for yourself? The reality is so terrifying, dark, bloody, and painful. You don't want that kind of reality. Raising his arms with difficulty, the crow's claws penetrated the enemy. You are also very tired. I know that you are actually just a human being. Although the pseudo-emperor transformed you into a weapon that only knows how to fight, you are still a human being at heart. You are tired. You are tired, so you might as well take a rest. Bar. He tried 3 times, or 4 times, and finally raised his arm. The crow's claws penetrated the enemy, but both of them fell at the same time. Ha, in the end, I won. Robert was lying on the corpse, his body as mutilated as a rag. He was coughing up blood in his throat, but he was still smiling. Sure enough, the strongest enemy is yourself. I'm dead, and you can't live. Your soul is about to dissipate, so how can you say victory? On the other side, she stood up, and the scars on her body were even more shocking, as if she had been put into a blender. It was agitated, but what was shocking was that her scars were recovering extremely quickly. But Robert was not afraid, he looked calm. You don't understand, the devil will not understand an Astartes monk. We give up all the ordinary lives just to protect mankind. Astartes is dedication, it's about sacrifice, not gain or possession. So you sacrificed yourself and took me with you, she laughed, her smile was extremely weird, and then your ridiculous apprentice can inherit your body and your legacy and continue to serve the false emperor. You, how do you know him? Ha 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 ha, I said, everything is as expected, without exception, she smiled brightly, tisk, 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 look at your frightened look, of course I knew it from the beginning, your poor apprentice is different from you. He is just an ordinary person. Do you think he can resist those temptations? Money, food, lust, dominance, vanity, and decadence can satisfy everyone, but he cannot. If you resist that kind of evil, he will fall sooner or later. You win this game. I will disappear with you, but the game has just begun, and you will never see it again. I believe him. He is my best apprentice. Although he inevitably has various flaws, he is a kind person. Robert coughed up blood and said, Lee, keep your kindness and never lose it. The devil's face suddenly became extremely ugly, and he suddenly roared loudly at Robert, then what did you get? Yes, you won, but what did we get from this victory? Nothing. Have nothing and then die like this. Why are we so harsh on ourselves, why can't we get any good things? What have I gained? Robert laughed, have I ever criticized myself? I just know my place. I am a member of the Crows, I am a combat instructor. Now, I have got the best ending. It's really fortunately, victory or death, our Crow's motto, our Crow's war cry, and this time I can have two at the same time. For the Crow, what could be better than this ending? The figures of the two began to fade away. Li, my friend, she raised her head and looked at Li. She is Robert and the evil god Slaanesh. Li doesn't know exactly what she is. The demon is proficient in the art of lies. You never know whether one of her words is true or which one is false. But whatever she was going to fade away. But at this moment, she was neither regretful, sad, nor angry, as if it was not her who was about to disappear, and she didn't care about the failure at all, as if she had just played a pleasant game, and now the game is over, who wins or loses it becomes less important. At this moment, as a devil, she seemed to become noble and holy. She was no longer simply Robert's dark side, but a more special existence. She just smiled calmly and looked like Li in the void. I remember your appearance, human soul, and I will wait for you in the Temple of Joy. There can satisfy all your desires, you will be eternally happy. I believe you are not as stupid as your mentor. Oh, just mentioning these words seems stupid. I would like to talk to you more and tell you how. Only in this way can we become smarter and see clearly the essence of this ugly world. But in this cruel world, the time of joy is always so short. When the time comes to say goodbye, the evil spirit of the curse will eventually dissipate. Gone, but the power of darkness will remain. This is my gift to you, and it is more precious than you can imagine. Li, use these powers to your advantage and don't be bound by meaningless things. Nothing is more important than making yourself happy. Immediately, Robert and her disappeared into the air, and the whole world began to collapse. Chapter 18. The sun shone gently on the earth, flocks of white doves flew over the silver-white square, and water jets rushed into the sky from the fountains and scattered. On this day of rest, even the falling water was joyful. This was a spring day. Not long ago, the empire had just passed the 40th millennium. The imperial capital had just held a grand parade and carnival. The atmosphere of carnival had gradually faded away, but the taste of joy seemed to remain in the air. Nobles from all over the universe participated in this grand ceremony. After the celebration, it was free time for the nobles. Some of them seized the opportunity to work in various departments of the imperial capital for their future and their own interests. Some of them, as devout believers, prayed sincerely in the cathedral, sang hymns, and shed tears of excitement, and more nobles just enjoyed themselves. After all, for these nobles distributed in various corners of the Milky Way, there would not be too many opportunities to come to Earth. At this time, they were swimming freely in the great birthplace of mankind, the heart of the entire empire. Earth is not only the center of the empire's politics, but also the center of religion. On Earth, there is the Vatican Council of Cardinals, which is the recognized religious core in the hearts of believers. Although there is the Vatican Auxiliary Council on Ophelia No. 7, a religious institution that exists on par with the Vatican Council of Cardinals, the inertia of thousands of years still makes people think that Earth is the true core of religion. What's more, my emperor is also on Earth. So whether it is a firm believer or a pan-believer whose faith is not so firm, most of them will visit those magnificent religious buildings after coming to Earth. Those cathedrals that are large enough for interstellar spacecraft to shuttle through are so huge that they are like residences built for legendary giants. Just looking at them from a distance makes people feel insignificant. Above the cathedral are numerous thin tower-style buildings, various vertical heroic sculptures decorate the top of the church, as well as those relief murals that fill the streets and alleys, and those ancient buildings with the vicissitudes of time. All of these are scenery that cannot be missed on Earth. Of course, there is also the Holy Spirit Church of the Empire. Even the corrupt nobles in the Empire are happy to bring their children or descendants to visit the Holy Spirit Hall. This is a good place to shape the correct outlook on life. Some colleges in the Empire even regularly organize students to visit here, so that children can listen to the servants of the Holy Spirit Hall telling the deeds of those heroes and the magical stories left behind in those legendary times. The outer hall of the Holy Spirit Hall is a black and charming Gothic building. The walls outside the hall are engraved with scenes of heroes fighting bloody battles for the Empire. Tourists line up in a long queue under the guidance of the tour guide and enter the Holy Spirit Hall in an orderly manner. Whenever they arrive at a scenic spot, there will be servants to tell them the most exciting stories of heroes and the most intense battles. From the time Robert Lee was hit by the curse and fell on the battlefield until now, the galaxy has gone through 9,000 years. During these 9,000 years, the empire has gone through one storm after another under the protection of the emperor. There was a dark period, and the empire's building was crumbling, but after all, the empire still did not fall in the wind and rain. The empire has survived various dangers and has now entered a relatively relaxed period. The political situation within the empire is relatively stable, and the national strength is gradually recovering. Moreover, there is no large-scale foreign war for the time being. The people of the empire living at this time are undoubtedly happy, and they enjoy the hard-won peace and happiness. Today, the Imperial Holy Spirit Hall is no longer just a place to store the bodies of heroes. The ancient temple that stores the bodies of heroes is the inner hall, and visitors are generally not allowed to enter. Outside the inner hall, a majestic and beautiful outer hall has been rebuilt, and the role of the outer hall is to provide people with visits. Suddenly, in this temple full of tourists, a strange bell sounded. The bell sound was so majestic and ancient. It was not amplified by any electronic equipment, but it was easily heard by everyone. Most of the tourists were stunned. They began to look for the source of the bell sound, while the servants who were responsible for explaining the situation were at a loss. They also didn't know where the bell sounded. In the midst of astonishment and confusion, the servants suddenly saw the high priest running out of the room. At this moment, the high priest in charge of the affairs of the outer hall completely ignored his image. He was still wearing a nightgown, and the crown with gorgeous decorations was tucked under his armpit. He didn't even wear shoes. He ran out of the priest's rest area barefoot, passed through the scenic area with many tourists, and ran towards the inner hall under the astonished eyes of everyone. At this time, the inner hall of the Holy Spirit Church was also in chaos. Some priests were panicking, while others were so excited that their faces turned red. Even the bishop in charge of the Holy Spirit Church could not help showing his excitement. The reason why these clergymen were like this was because they all knew the meaning of the bell. What was rung in the Holy Spirit Hall was the awakening bell. Every time this bell was rung, it meant the return of a Holy Spirit. For various reasons, those heroes who had once dominated the world found it extremely difficult to walk out after entering the coffin of the Holy Spirit Hall, which was no different from being dead. In the nearly 9,000 years of history, the bell of the Holy Spirit Hall has only been rung 3 times, and every time the bell rang, it represented the resurrection of a legend, or the complete death of a legend. At this time, the archbishop who was in charge of the inner hall of the Holy Spirit Hall was kneeling in a special auditorium. The archbishop kept chanting prayers. He sincerely praised the emperor and praised the miracle that happened again. It was a rare blessing for the archbishop to hear the ringing of the awakening bell during his tenure. The ancient machinery made a creaking sound, and soon, a silver coffin was transported to this special auditorium by a mechanical arm. After finishing the prayer, the protagonist took off an ancient golden key from his neck and handed it to a mechanical servant beside him. The mechanical servant bowed respectfully, took the golden key with both hands, walked to the silver coffin, and opened the coffin with his most gentle movements. In the coffin lay a handsome boy, who looked so young, as if he was 18 years old, but when he opened his eyes, the bishop saw the deep vicissitudes and fatigue in his eyes. "I am the bishop in charge of the Holy Spirit Church, East. I was your servant during your sleep. I welcome you back." The bishop bowed and said, "May I have the honor to know your name?" "Well," the boy sat up from the silver coffin, shook his head in pain, and then opened his mouth and said a name in a slightly hoarse voice and unskilled ancient Gothic language, "Robert Lee." A priest behind the protagonist immediately ticked a single eye, which meant that the awakening process was normal. The one who woke up from his slumber was not the original Robert Lee, but the Lee who had traveled through time. However, when his mentor disappeared, Lee no longer existed. Now, only Lee, who inherited Robert's name, remained in this world. He vowed to live up to this honorable name. And now, it was just the beginning, the first step at the very beginning. Robert Lee walked out of the silver coffin somewhat clumsily, took the first step shakily, and one foot made a pop sound on the cold and smooth floor. A servant hurriedly walked to Lee's side and wanted to help him, but he was pushed away mercilessly. "I am Robert, the close combat mentor of Crow. I don't need help from others." Robert Lee said, "Get out of the way. No matter what, I don't need help from others to walk." Chapter 19. With Lee's awakening, an ancient system originally set up for the Holy Spirit Church began to operate in an orderly manner. The first thing that was quickly established was a complete isolation system. A room formed by a huge plastic inflatable bag completely separated Lee from the outside world. Then various medical equipment and mechanical servants entered the auditorium one after another, and then it was an unexpectedly complicated physical examination. The first thing to make sure is that after 9,000 years of slumber, Li did not carry any ancient germs with him. Although the medical system is relatively developed in this era, bacteria and diseases are still floating in the air, and these small things are everywhere. Fortunately, the Empire has established a complete disease prevention system. Whether it is an ancient awakened person like Li or a visitor from a distant planet, the first thing they have to face is this system. It's just that the inspection of Li needs to be extra strict. After all, it involves 9,000 years, and Li was once a person who suffered a terrible curse. No one knows whether the evil god will put some terror in his body. Stuff. For a whole week, Li worked with various examination equipment with the help of medical staff, constantly drawing blood, testing, and asking questions. In the last 2 days, 2 clergy even came, and they replaced all the medical staff and inflated the tube. The large isolation room was taken away, the medical equipment disappeared, and the room became the auditorium again. But Li clearly felt the change in the atmosphere. Li sat on a chair, facing a long table, while 2 clergymen sat behind the long table. On the wallpaper behind them were the double-headed eagle emblem of the Empire, and the double-headed eagle emblem. Crosses placed side by side. Rough questions kept popping up. The 2 clerics unceremoniously interrogated Li about everything in his past, doubting everything Li said. They kept asking about his faith and repeatedly confirmed his loyalty to the Emperor. What is this? Li finally became uncontrollably angry. I can understand the physical and disease examination. After all, I have slept for 9,000 years. Who knows what terrible things are sleeping with me? Some reactions in IQ test me. I can understand that you want to make sure that my brain is not damaged after sleeping for so long, but what is this now? Who are you two? What are they talking about? I can't accept it. Do you think I'm an enemy? Are you interrogating me as an enemy? Suddenly the door beside Li was opened, and a man wearing a black robe, with his head hidden in the black shadow of the hood, walked into the room. Please don't blame them, Li, it's not the way they treat you. That is their intention. We are all familiar with your past actions, and you are the glory of our empire. Then what are these 2 guys doing? They are interrogating me like a prisoner. That's their job. These 2 are judges, and I have the highest authority here. I am Judge Elizabeth. With that said, Elizabeth took the initiative to pull down her hood, revealing her true face. Oh, Li whistled playfully. This is a beautiful girl with long golden hair, blue eyes, and a tall nose. No matter from which angle you look at it, she is a blonde beauty. It's just that this woman's face is a little too serious, her lips are tightly pursed, and her indifference and arrogance are undisguised. There is no warmth in her blue eyes, as if they have been cold for thousands of years. It was like ice, and Li's skin felt cold just by looking at her blue eyes. It was not a normal way of looking at people, but like looking at an object, looking at a dead thing, with unabashed hatred. What a frivolous act! Inquisitor Elizabeth's voice was cold and without a trace of emotion, just like the cold universe. If I were you, I would never whistle at an inquisitor. You are undoubtedly suicide. Hey, before you say something terrible and scary to me, can I know who you are? Do you belong to that institution of the Empire? Li spread his hands and said, a long time ago, as early as yours I have been the Emperor's knight and master of the Raven Guard since before my great-great-grandfather was born. What qualifications do you have to interrogate me here? Inquisitor Elizabeth was stunned, then nodded, I see, it's our negligence to say so. I originally thought that our organization had been heard of by the whole universe, but I didn't expect. At this point, the serious beauty the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, it was a sarcastic smile, and the 2 clergymen sitting opposite Li also laughed in time. Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself to you. We are composed of a trial team composed of 2 judges from the tribunal. Both of them are outstanding judges. They come from the tribunal of heretics, and I come from the tribunal of demons. I am also the leader of this temporary group. This trial official. Sorry, I've never heard of this organization. The Inquisition sounds like a legal institution. 9,000 years is a long time. During these 9,000 years, many changes have taken place in the Empire. I think you need time to adapt to it. Of course, this is after you pass our review. Inquisitor Elizabeth said, in order to obtain your cooperation, I think it is necessary for us to give you a brief introduction to the tribunal. The Heretic Tribunal is responsible for dealing with those who betray the Emperor. They will review your loyalty, while the Demon Tribunal will deal with those demons from chaos, I am responsible for checking whether you are contaminated by chaos. In order to protect the Emperor, I fought to the death against the enemies of chaos on Earth. I used my body to block the enemy's attacks for Sanguinius. I fell with honor on the battlefield, and now when I wake up but I have to be treated as an enemy. Do you think I am a traitor who betrayed the Emperor? Or one of those demons of chaos? Li was very excited. Only he knew that at least half of the reason came from fear. He slapped the table and yelled, "Stop joking, do chaos demons still need to be judged? Those guys who are contaminated by chaos can tell just from their appearance." Elizabeth was unmoved. She still asked in a cold voice, "Sir Robert, how much do you know about the chaos demon?" "Not too much," Li sat down angrily and said, "I don't need to know too much. Their necks are weak points and they will die after being seriously injured. This is enough for me to kill them easily." "Then you know nothing," Judge Eliza said with a slightly raised tone. "In fact, since the Great Rebellion, the Empire has been in an unstable situation for a long time. The most important thing about our Empire is the enemy is those demonic creatures from chaos. They have polluted half of the Star Warriors. After the defeat of Horus, they retreated into the Eye of Chaos and continue to fight against our great Empire. From the last war you participated in, do you understand that those chaotic armies still exist to this day?" Li nodded uncertainly. "You actually don't understand that these bastards tainted by chaos have been fighting the Empire for 9,000 years. During the 9,000 years you have been sleeping, they have been maintaining small-scale wars with the Empire's legions, and occasionally there will be large-scale wars. Conflict, but this is not the most terrifying thing about demons. What is terrifying about them is that the touch of chaos can cause some people who are not so determined to fall. They will be seduced by chaos demons and then controlled by chaos. It is impossible for a person to truly see the true intentions of these demons, unless he can see through the appearance. Of course, most of the demons have appeared in their true colors. They are hideous and ugly, and they can be clearly distinguished just from their appearance," Judge Elizabeth said as she walked away. She paused for a moment, then looked at Li, and said in a tone of disgust, "However, there are some cunning demons who will pretend to be the work of the Empire. Personnel, they will lurk in human bodies and brains, hiding among us, pretending to be our friends. Then," she said passionately in an oath-like tone, "so for us, no one can. Believe me, I will spare no effort to eradicate the demons until all the slaves of chaos are purified." Li shrugged indifferently, "It sounds like our enemy is very cunning. No matter how cunning the prey is, it cannot escape the hunter's pursuit." Inquisitor Elizabeth looked at Li with burning eyes, as if looking at a prey of great value. "And you, once touched by the curse of Slaanesh, it's too obvious. Even your appearance has changed due to the curse. The curse has turned you from a space warrior to a pretty boy. For God's sake, I hate pretty boys the most. Forget it. What can I say, you have been cursed by chaos, maybe the curse has changed you, and the curse has made a demon hidden in your body, maybe you are a demon, just wearing the skin of Robert Li." There was a loud clang sound, and this pretty boy, who looked unattractive in the eyes of the judge, smashed the long metal table in front of him with one punch. "You bastard!" Li looked at the woman angrily and asked, "What qualifications do you have to accuse me like this? Use such words to provoke a mentor of the Crow Guard? Do you know what you are talking about?" "Yes, I was indeed hit by the curse, but so what? I have recovered now, the curse has long since dissipated, and I am still the mentor of the Crow Group, and you dare to say it casually in front of me. This is a very serious accusation, but maybe, what right do you have to make such a shocking accusation based on mere speculation?" Chapter 20. As long as there is chaos pollution, I have absolute power. Elizabeth looked at the collapsed long table, raised her eyebrows slightly, and continued, "Here I am above any laws of the Empire, you all rights will be put aside until your purity is determined after the trial, and those rights will return to you, and the achievements you mentioned before, your past deeds, your contribution to the Empire, and your status, all of this, doesn't mean much to us. By the way, the Crow Guard is gone, so your status is meaningless." "How is it possible?" Li was shocked. "Raven will not let this happen. In fact, it was the Ravens who caused all this. After the Great Rebellion, the Raven Guard was almost completely wiped out. Although the Ravens are very powerful, they cannot restore your war group to its heyday, and there are rumors of the Raven Guard's surgery. There are big flaws, and the success rate is less than 1%. Elizabeth looked at Lee and said, "You should know what this means. What kind of number is 1%? Can it be called surgery?" It was like a massacre. There were not many suitable recruits, and most of them died during the operation. After that, the Raven Guard was split up and the Ravens were almost invisible. News about the old group's activities, what do you think its fate will be? Lee fell into silence. In his memory, the Crow Guard was so powerful. They had participated in countless epic battles and withstood countless cruel tests. In my memory, there is no creature in the galaxy that can stop the Crow's claws, victory or death, this is the Crow's motto, and the Crow has not died in the cruel battle, this is because they have been winning. The founder of the war group, Raven, is a godlike figure. He is noble, upright, and intelligent. All the praise words Robert can think of can be applied to Raven. He respects Raven even more than the Holy Emperor. Lee never believed that such a powerful Crow society would die like this, but what if what she said was true? There is no need for too many reasons, just a 1% success rate is enough for its demise. 1%, this is such a terrible number. It means that it is extremely difficult for the Crow Guard to get new recruits, and war will always be accompanied by attrition. When the replenishment cannot catch up with its consumption, it means the demise of this fighting group. Besides, the Raven is also missing. Lee lowered his head and sat down on the chair weakly. Elizabeth was very satisfied with the damage her words had caused to Lee, so she decided to take advantage of the victory and pursue it. To tell you the truth, if it weren't for your previous achievements, our trial against you would never stop at rude words. Yes, the Inquisition is proficient in all kinds of cruel torture, which is something you don't want to try. You just need to understand that it is unimaginable cruelty, so I hope you can cooperate with our trial wisely. Once we determine that you have been contaminated by chaos, then purification will be waiting for you. Purification. Of course it was burned to ashes. And you should know that the so-called conclusion of confirming that you have been contaminated by chaos does not actually require much evidence. As long as I am convinced that you have been contaminated by chaos, then it's just contaminated. I just need to find a reasonable reason. For example, your handsome face, obviously you were changed by the curse, your face didn't look like this before. My face turned out to be darker, and my skin wasn't that smooth. Lee touched his face and said with some lack of confidence, I don't really like the way I look now, but who told me that I haven't seen him in 9,000 years? It's sunny. Judge Elizabeth looked at Lee with a sneer. She observed the expression on Lee's face. Unfortunately, she did not find fear, panic, or other more interesting expressions on this handsome face. He didn't care much about his own life or death, but he showed obvious depression because of the news about the war group. Typical behavior of Brother Astarte, Elizabeth also had some doubts about her judgment for a moment. So after a while, she changed to a slightly gentle tone and continued, so, your initial whistle to me was extremely unwise. Any person who is being judged will know how to respect his judge. And you have to know that the essence of slavish is to enjoy pleasure and indulge in sensuality. Your frivolous behavior will be used as one of the evidences of your corruption. I will record your initial performance in detail, and the final result will probably be different. This is decided. Leda opened his mouth and asked in disbelief, you mean I will probably be burned to death because I whistled and because my face is whiter? It's very possible, Elizabeth said seriously, because I come from the demon tribunal, I have this power. This is too ridiculous. What else can Lee say? He had no choice but to put aside some of his pride and honor and cooperate with the work of these judges. In fact, this would not be too difficult for Lee. Although he also valued honor, he had not yet reached the heights of Robert E. Lee. Lee and his mentor had been together for 9,000 years. He knew very well that the Robert Lee before waking up was a true fanatic who took honor is my life as one of his life creeds. He is also a respected and true knight. For that person, even in the face of death, he will not do anything that damages the honor of the chapter. Lee, on the other hand, is more casual. It would be nice to have more honors, but it is absolutely impossible to give up his life for a few slogans or an iron plate. In fact, Lee's idea is actually very dangerous. If others view it in good faith, then it can be said that this person is open-minded and flexible. But if it is explained strictly according to the rules of this era, it means that one does not value honor so much, and his loyalty to the emperor is questionable. The former is enough to keep Lee away from most of the administrative agencies and power structures of the empire, while the latter will definitely it really put Li in a very dangerous situation. But in any case, the focus of this investigation team is not whether Li is suspected of betraying the emperor. Even the two judges from the heretic tribunal in the investigation team have no doubts about this. This is simply unnecessary. Questioning matters: how could a fighting hero who had awakened from a dreamlike legendary age betray the emperor? Of course, according to the literature, these people may not be as loyal to the emperor as they are. Until now, many interstellar marine regiments are of the same tune. They are loyal to the emperor, but they are not devout believers in the emperor. The knowledgeable judges all knew that this was a fault caused by history and culture, so they had no doubts about Li's performance. The harsh words and pointed questions coming from the mouths of these two judges all came from the instructions of Judge Elizabeth. The more cunning a demon is, the weaker it is. Cunning makes them smarter, and smartness is synonymous with cowardice from a certain perspective. This is especially true for demons from Slaanesh. There the essence is to indulge in lust and pleasure, so when those bastards from chaos found themselves in the heart of mankind, on the earth, they soon met their nemesis, me from the demon tribunal. When you find that his whereabouts have been exposed and his identity has begun to be doubted, he will be afraid and frightened, and then his flaws will be exposed. So I need you to use words to attack him from the beginning and pierce his weak defense. Make him fearful, make him angry, make him lose his normal state, and then I will observe carefully and make a judgment. One of the judges said displeased at that time, so it sounds like you have determined that our waking hero has been contaminated by chaos. It's not a certainty, it's an assumption. I will first assume that he has been contaminated by chaos. He is now a cunning enemy. I will do everything possible to expose his mask. I am very fair and I will give him a chance. In the process, he was able to reverse my judgment through his outstanding performance. Elizabeth added, this is not only my way of doing things, but also the way of the demon tribunal. Conclusion of guilt. The judges from the heretic tribunal felt a little uncomfortable with this. Although they were both tribunals, the two tribunals behaved in completely different ways. Yes, no matter who he is. I would rather kill tens of millions of people by mistake than let one go. Before meeting Li, the judge and the two judges made many judgments about possible situations and carefully screened the issues. Elizabeth had been observing Li from outside the room from the very beginning. It was an ancient way. A single-sided reflective glass allowed Elizabeth to clearly see what was happening in the room, but Li could only see what was happening inside the glass. Of myself. But when the trial actually began, things didn't go so smoothly. This melee master named Li is much smarter than expected. At least he is not the kind of space warrior with a brain full of muscles that Elizabeth imagined. Li is more like a calm commander. He is insightful, sharp-tongued and calm. Even when faced with questioning that made Elizabeth feel excessive, he did not lose his calmness. Yes, he did get angry and irritated because of those problems, but he didn't get dizzy with anger. He just suppressed his anger and then talked to you slowly with an attitude that was neither hard nor soft. At some point, Elizabeth even had to wonder if her opponent was a space marine. Could it be that there was a mistake? Judging from his performance, this guy should be a diplomat. This made Elizabeth angry, so she rushed into the room without following the original plan. She was a threat at first, and then she was annoyed to find that the threat did not have much effect. This person who came back from 9,000 years ago, the idiot didn't know the prestige of the demon tribunal. When he heard the name of the demon tribunal, he showed no expression on his face. It was as if he heard the name of an unrelated clerical department in the empire. From this reaction alone, Elizabeth could roughly confirm Li's safety. At least she had never seen a demon remain calm after hearing the name of the demon tribunal, no matter how good the demon was in disguise. More importantly, no trace of Li being infected by chaos was found in various tests and data. There was no trace of evil in his body. He didn't even have psychic powers. On the contrary, these data all show that he is as pure as a newborn baby. Apart from Li's handsome face and well-maintained skin, there was almost no other evidence to prove that he was contaminated by chaos. If it is an ordinary person, it doesn't matter even if there is no evidence. The life and death of the person being tried is just a matter of words. Who can question it? But Li's identity was different. Not long after he woke up, several star chapters sent messages, something about the former Crow's chapter being split into multiple smaller chapters, and even the Blood Angels. Fighting groups. The messages sent by these fighting groups are very simple, mostly asking about Li's physical condition. It is not difficult to understand that they are Li's former comrades or juniors, and it is normal behavior to express concern. What is more strange is the note sent by the High Lords Association, indicating that the Lords are also paying attention to the situation here. Moreover, Li's identity was not ordinary. The God Emperor had personally inspected Li's physical condition. This alone gave Li a transcendent status. Under so much pressure, Elizabeth was not allowed to have too many ideas. But what made her unable to let go was the clear disgust that came from deep in her heart. It didn't make much sense. It was just a woman's sixth sense. However, Elizabeth regarded this as a sign and a guide. And no matter what it is, in most cases, this omen is always right. Elizabeth trusted her instincts, which convinced her that this guy Li must be hiding something. But in the end, when there was so much evidence in favor of Li, she could only regard her dislike of Li as a simple dislike of the pretty boy. I just hate pretty boys too much, and this guy Li is the pretty boy among pretty boys, so I hate him, and this feeling invisibly affects my judgment. Alas! Under this thought, censorship began to level off after that. The follow-up investigation consists of some routine and boring routine questions, and as one question is asked, more questions will be asked back by the person being questioned. It's not that Li deliberately disrupted the trial with his rhetorical tone, but because he had just woken up after 9,000 years of sleep. He knew absolutely nothing about many things in this world. No matter who Robert E. Li was, he was the same. Nothing is known. After all, even for human society, 9,000 years is not a short period of time. If Li wanted to understand the judge's questions, he had to ask more questions, so the trial became a torment for the judge in the end. In less than 3 days, Judge Elizabeth hurriedly ended the review. She felt that she was facing a curious baby who kept asking, "What does this mean?" Li was finally labeled pure logo. But this is not over yet. After passing the physical examination, Li will be placed in a church on the earth for isolation observation for half a year. In fact, the Empire does not really hope that the heroes lying in the Holy Spirit Hall will wake up. For the Empire's senior officials and bureaucrats at all levels, it is much better for these heroes to lie in expensive coffins and be worshipped than to walk out. At least this will be much easier for both parties. After all, the ruling class never needs heroes. Chapter 21. Roland stood in front of the old wooden door and spent 3 minutes calming himself down. Then he tidied his clothes again. This was the 8th time he tidied his clothes today. Roland wore a beautiful dress today. This dress was specially made for him a week ago. It was a noble dress with a retro style. Simple black and dark blue constituted the main colors of this dress. Wearing this dress would give people a calm and steady feeling, which was exactly what Roland needed. He was only 16 years old and didn't want to be looked down upon because of his age. Besides, he was about to meet such a legendary hero. Roland counted 1, 2, 3 in his heart. Then he mustered up his courage and excitedly pushed the door open to go in, but before Roland took a step, he heard a hard voice coming from the room, "Don't you know how to knock on the door?" Roland's face flushed. He immediately retracted his steps, closed the door again, and knocked respectfully 3 times. "Knock, knock, knock. Come in." Roland then walked into the room. Like all the side rooms of the ancient churches of that period, this room was not big, and there was no fancy decoration in the small room. In this simple room, a black-haired young man sat on an old rattan chair. Behind him was an open window. The afternoon sun quietly shone on the young man, coating him with a thin layer of golden light. The young man sitting in the room closed his eyes, as if he was enjoying the sunshine. The scene was extremely peaceful, and it was far from what Roland had expected. In Roland's imagination, the person he was about to meet should be 3 meters tall, with thick muscles, scars that made people feel awe, and murderous intent in his eyes. His background should preferably be a pile of corpses made up of countless enemy corpses, and under his feet was a river of enemy blood. Yes, this would be in line with that person's status and reputation, but now... Roland was stunned for a moment, and then asked uncertainly, "Excuse me, are you Mr. Robert Li?" The black-haired young man opened his eyes, and Roland was disappointed to find that there was not much murderous intent in the young man's eyes, and his eyes were not very scary, and he also gave people a gentle feeling, just like the warm afternoon sunshine. His face shape was even softer, giving people a feeling of beauty rather than handsomeness. "Yes, you found the right one. I am Robert Li. You can call me Li," Li said. "What about you, young visitor? Who are you?" "Well, let me guess, who is alien to you?" Roland bent down and answered respectfully, "Are you talking about Aelin, Ptri Aelin?" "Yes, that's him, little Aelin." "Who is he to you?" "He is my ancestor," Roland said. "I am Roland Aelin, the only descendant of this generation of the Aelin family." "A descendant of Aelin?" Lee nodded. "It can be seen that you are really alike, with almost the same face and expression. He was as young as you back then, but now, is he still alive?" "After the physical and genetic transformation of the Space Marines, they have eternal life. Some of them will gradually age, but this is only a physical manifestation. They will not die due to the passage of time." "Dead," Roland replied. "My ancestor died on the battlefield. His chest was blown open, with a frontal wound. It was an honorable death, just as my ancestor expected. It's hard to say whether this piece of news is bad news or good news." Lee closed his eyes and calmed down the complicated feelings in his heart. He was silent for a long time before opening his eyes again and said, "Yes, you are indeed my disciple." "Then Roland, why did you come to see me? You are my only visitor during this period of time. It won't be that easy to see me, right?" "Yes, it is very difficult to meet you during this period of time. It requires complicated procedures and layers of review. Even if it is approved, the time to meet with you is strictly controlled. This time I only have half an hour. But I can guarantee that such supervision should be lifted in 2 months. Please understand that this is a problem of system and procedure. According to the rules can only be like this, please be patient." "No, I didn't say it's not good now," Lee said calmly. "In fact, it's very good, just like now I read books and bask in the sun every day, and I really need some time to let myself re-understand the world. The changes are really huge." "I'm glad you can think so. The House of Nobles has already started discussing your affairs. Once there is a consistent result, the House of Nobles will intervene in this matter. I believe that the time for you to be free is not far away." "House of Nobles?" Lee frowned. In his memory, he had already drawn a clear line with those people. Why would there still be nobles thinking about him after 9,000 years? But he quickly put this doubt aside. After all, it's useless to think about it now. Some things just need to be waited. Lee decided to put this news aside first. "I know, it's really good news. So, you came here to bring me this good news?" "Of course not," Roland smiled, then he carefully took out a small metal box from his bag, held the box in both hands and carefully placed it on the table in front of Lee. "I came to bring you this, please open it." Lee frowned and looked at the metal box in front of him. This was a familiar style and structure, but it was a bit too classical for people nowadays. Lee did not touch the box, he just asked, "What is this?" "This is the Emperor's reward." "The Emperor's reward?" "Yes, in that great rebellion, although the enemy's army had already attacked the Emperor's palace, the enemy's leader, the traitor Horus, eventually fell in front of the Emperor, but our great Emperor was also seriously injured. After the war, he made a series of arrangements and then lay in the Golden Throne until now." Lee had already learned about this from history books. This was also the first thing Lee did after accepting the inspection of the Demon Tribunal and moving here to be confined. Lee first asked for enough books to bring him. He needed a lot of reading. Nothing can help you learn about the current situation of the Empire faster than reading. Lee urgently needs to know what happened to the Empire after he fell asleep. Lee first read the history of the Empire, and what he cares most about is the last battle. The victory of the battle naturally belongs to the Empire, but it is not all as glorious as described in history books. Lee can see the real side from the hypocritical and flashing words of historians. It was an extremely tragic battle. After Lee fell, the human garrison lost the defense line of the Immortal Wall not long after it was stationed. The Satan Gate did not stop the enemies who kept coming like a tide. The garrison could only continue to retreat and shrink helplessly. Lee read the record of that battle in a book that was forbidden to be spread outside. Although it was only a few words that had been deleted and modified, it could fully show the tragedy on the battlefield at that time. The mile-wide outer wall of the Imperial Palace is not just a solid defensive wall. Countless storage rooms, offices, and workshops are set up inside the wall, forming a tortuous and complex maze. Fierce melees unfold here, and rivers of blood mixed with the filthy blood of traitors and the blood of loyal Imperial warriors flow in every corner. Later, the warriors could only fight in blood that submerged their ankles. And not far from here, at the Lions Gate Airport, countless Chaos Space Marines are still landing and joining the army besieging the Imperial Palace. The end of the human world, the fall of the fortress seemed to be only a matter of time. Then came the fall of Sanguinius. He and his blood angels were stationed in front of the end gate as the last barrier. Behind the gate was the Emperor's palace. Countless demons and cannibals launched a frenzied attack on them. The enemy hoped to force them into the gate in this way, but this plan was thwarted by Sanguinius. He alone resisted a bloodthirsty demon of horror and countless cannibal warriors until all the surviving defenders retreated into the end gate and closed the gate. The defenders bought enough time for the Emperor. The legions rushing back from all over the empire were gathering, and Horus was running out of time. In the end, he made a desperate decision. He ordered the flagship commander to remove the energy shield of the flagship and wait for the arrival of the Emperor himself, because he knew that the last hope of winning this battle was to kill the Emperor in a one-on-one duel. Li already knew the outcome of this battle. Sanguinius was killed by Horus. It was a painful curse. Sanguinius was tortured to death by a powerful and brutal spiritual force, and then the Emperor killed Horus, although the Emperor himself was seriously injured. The death of Horus led to the collapse of the Chaos forces. Most of the rebels fled into the Eye of Terror, and their former homes and loved ones were left behind to face the wrath of the Empire. The seriously injured Emperor could not survive, so he entered the Golden Throne, which was essentially the same device as the coffin of the Holy Spirit Hall. The seriously injured Emperor could not survive, but the Emperor was so precious that he could not die. So he sat on the Golden Throne, not alive, not dead, just existing. Chapter 22. Li's thoughts were brought back by Roland's clear voice. After being seriously injured, the Emperor insisted on doing as usual, personally rewarded the meritorious soldiers, and made a fair judgment on the traitors. The reward for you was also awarded at that time. Yes, it was a reward that you received from my ancestor, Ilan. It has been kept by our Ilan family for you since then. The ancient program has been started as soon as you wake up, and our family gets it as soon as possible. After receiving the official written notice, I began to work hard to meet you so that I could personally hand over this precious reward to you. Even though Li was a time traveler and his feelings for the Emperor were not as real and passionate as his mentors, Li was still hit by a strong emotion for a moment, and Li just sat on the chair blankly. Tears burst out of his eyes involuntarily and fell down his face. Even though there was a long period of 9,000 years apart, the Emperor and the Empire had never failed their warriors. Suddenly, Li seemed to have penetrated 9,000 years of time through the box on the table and returned to the moment of victory. The Emperor sat in his palace covered in blood and bestowed honors on the meritorious warriors. Whether they were present or absent, living or dead, all warriors received a fair evaluation. The loyal and brave men received honors and awards. Their blood did not flow in vain. They paid their lives and sacrifices. The Emperor saw all this and gave them the honors and rewards they deserved. For such an Emperor, how could the warriors not fight bloody battles and fight to the end? Li gently stroked the ancient box, as gently as he was stroking his lover's skin. What's in it? Li asked. We don't know, Roland smiled and replied. His Majesty the Emperor did not explain what the reward was, and the Ilan family did not open the Emperor's reward. We do not have the power, so it should be up to you. Open it with your own hands. Li didn't say anything more. He wiped his tears, then carefully knocked open the special sealing wax on the mouth of the box, and opened the box. Inside the box is a silver key, and next to the key is a roll of specially treated paper. 9,000 years of time have only made the paper slightly browned. Li carefully took out the paper and unfolded it very gently. The burnt yellow paper was written in the Empire's standard Gothic. The commission led to the heroic Robert E. Lee's distinguished performance in battle and his distinguished service. Whether it is his noble character or his excellent fighting skills, he will become a role model for our generation, and he is hereby issued an appointment order to commend him. With this commission, Robert Lee will become a glorious interstellar chapter commander. He will be allowed to form a new chapter, and will have the chapter flag, ship, regiment emblem, and other things that a regular chapter can have. Everything. May Captain Robert E. Lee lead his war band across the stars and spread the glory of the Emperor to mankind. In the lower right corner of the burnt yellow paper is the Emperor's signature, and a black imperial double-headed eagle seal. Under the seal is a line of small words. This appointment order is a photocopied attachment, and the original will be archived in the Imperial think tank. Li turned the letter over and over several times, and carefully checked the box several times. Only then did he confirm that what happened in front of him was not some kind of crude joke or some vicious test. This letter of appointment must be genuine. For a moment, the joy in Li's heart burst out almost uncontrollably. What could be more timely than this? Li really needs this thing now. If after waking up, seeing the respectful attitude of others towards him at first made Li feel happy for a while, then it would not be an exaggeration to call what happened next a nightmare. Whether it was the inspection of various instruments or the Inquisitor's obvious skepticism, the fear in Li's heart not only swelled, but if it was in his previous life, he would have screamed like a woman. Many times, Li was afraid that someone would suddenly rush in at the next moment, arrest him, and then drag him out and burn him to death. Will they discover something? Is there really an evil power within me? As Li's understanding of the world deepened, this fear became more and more inflated. Fortunately, Robert left Li with a cold face. Even though he became handsome, Robert's physical habits remained unchanged. Regardless of whether he was happy, angry, sad, or happy, Robert would not show it on his face. This good habit hid the fear in Li's heart very well, but it could not calm the fear. Li Tai knew what would happen if he was found to be a fake. Being burned directly to death is the best ending imaginable. It is different from a world where travelers have never seen or even heard of. It is not surprising that time travelers appear in the Empire. Many institutions in the Empire often deal with those time travelers. It's just that these common time travelers are not time travelers in the general sense like Li. They are evil spirits who sneaked into this world from different dimensions. Naturally, dealing with them involves finding these hidden evil spirits one by one, then cutting them into pieces for study, or simply killing them. That is a real demon. They have different abilities. Some can change into various beautiful appearances to tempt humans to fall, some can hide in the depths of people's hearts and affect people at a more mysterious spiritual level, and some can live in the human body like the opposite sex. Li has seen one in Robert's spiritual world. The words of that demon are not only inflammatory, but also can enter the spiritual world of others and directly affect people's souls. Such a wonderful power is enough to make people feel afraid. So if Li is found out that he is not the real Robert Li, but someone else, there is no need to be sure, just suspicion is enough for Li to be cleared as a demon. At that time, any excuse will be useless. You say you are an innocent traveler from the Earth? Who believes it? But if you have this and become the leader of a Star Wars group, then it can be regarded as a guarantee. The Inquisition could easily suspect an unarmed civilian, because it didn't matter if they were wrong, and the death of an insignificant civilian was nothing, but they would not easily suspect the leader of a Star Marine Corps, because the Star Marine Corps itself was a powerful armed force, and the Corps was not afraid of challenges from anywhere. In this way, at least the security problem had been slightly improved. Li calmed down a little, and then thought of the various difficulties in reality. He sighed and put on an expression that was completely different from his inner thoughts. He shook his head and smiled bitterly to confirm the Emperor's reward. At this moment, Roland suddenly stood up like a javelin, and the heels of his leather shoes collided with each other, making a crisp sound. "Stand at attention!" Roland shouted while making a standard standing posture. He raised his head high, bent one hand and raised it to his ear, and shouted loudly in the room, "Roland, a citizen of the Empire, hereby formally applies to Captain Robert Li to allow Roland to join the Star Wars Corps you are about to establish." Then he took out a white envelope, held it in front of Li with both hands, and respectfully placed it on the table. You have already prepared the application," Li said with a bitter smile. "You already know what's in this box. Reporting to the Lord, my family of Aelin has kept this reward for you for generations, and it has indeed never been opened privately, but His Majesty the Emperor did not only issue this reward back then." Roland explained, a total of 13 rewards of the same format were issued at that time, and 7 of them were opened on the spot by the parties involved. Each box contains the same commission, and the only difference is the wording of the commission and the name of the person who appointed it. It is naturally not difficult to guess the content of the box. The greatest wish of the ancestor back then was to help you, the Lord, to re-establish a powerful Star Wars Corps. For this reason, the ancestor has never been promoted. He personally participated in every battle on the front line and accumulated a lot of merits. It's a pity that he still couldn't wait until the Lord woke up. So being able to join the Lord's Star Wars Corps and serve the Lord is not only my wish, but also the wish of the Aelin family for generations. Chapter 23. It's not that simple, Li said with a wry smile. You are still too young, so you don't know what a Star Wars group is like. It's not that simple to form a Star Wars group, even for a small-scale group now. If it was 9,000 years ago, I would not hesitate to put on my armor and embark on the journey to the Starry Sea, but now. Li did not continue to speak. The world now is no longer the world he is familiar with. Things have changed, and 1,000 years of dreams have passed. This is probably the biggest feeling in Li's heart now, and the huge gap drawn by 9,000 years cannot be made up by just a commission. And unlike the young Roland, Li is more aware of the significance of the Star Wars group to the Empire. For the entire huge human empire, the Star Wars group is the most powerful mobile force of the Empire at this stage. They ride huge starships, galloping in the starry sea of the universe, defending humans and the Empire. There were only 20 interstellar regiments at first, which were led by the 20 sons of the Emperor. Each regiment had a size of more than 10,000 people. They were the ultimate embodiment of human force. No creature in the galaxy could stop these warriors. During the Great Crusade, the Emperor led this powerful legion to win victory after victory, slaughtered and wiped out countless alien races, completely wiped out these races from the galaxy, and recovered countless colonies. But after the Great Rebellion, all of this changed. The Emperor entered the Golden Throne, and half of the interstellar regiments participated in the rebellion. After the rebellion failed, they fled into the Eye of Terror, leaving behind a devastated empire. The remaining interstellar regiments were reorganized and dismantled soon after. According to the Astartes Codex compiled by Robert Guillemon, one of the 20 sons of the Emperor, the interstellar regiments were rebuilt for the second time. This is also helpless. The glory of the war group has been tarnished by those traitors. The high-ranking officials of the Empire who lost the Emperor had to find a way to control their warriors. They strictly limited the size of the war group to avoid such a tragedy again. The size of the new war group has been strictly controlled. If Li wants to form a war group now, the combatants of the primary war group cannot exceed 100. But even so, this is also an extremely powerful legion. Every qualified interstellar war group warrior is a killing machine on the battlefield, a destroyer of the enemy's confidence and will, and a great warrior blessed by the Emperor. Each of them is a warrior who can fight 1 against 100. They only need to avoid the large forces assembled by the enemy and match them with reasonable tactics. Then this force alone can run rampant in multiple galaxies. The letter of appointment is indeed very good, but it cannot be said that with this thing, the war group will be easily formed. Li made up his mind in his heart that no matter what difficulties he must get this group out. For Li, the battlefield is a much safer place than the Earth, at least he doesn't have to worry like he is now. I really didn't expect that such power would be handed over to me. No wonder the review was so strict, Li sighed. I didn't expect that I would get such a commission after I woke up. This means that I have the right to form a Star Wars group belonging to the Empire. Ha, I was wondering some time ago whether they would leave me alone for another 9,000 years. Of course not, Roland said sincerely. How could the Empire treat the war hero who awakened from the legendary era like this? Sir, although it is a bit rude, I still can't help asking, what is your final response to my application? I think you should know that applying to join the Star Wars group is not just about getting many honors. It is a death application. I have looked through the recent records. As for the history of the old Ravens, I think other chapters should be in a similar situation. After a long battle and years, the gene pool of the chapter is mostly broken and incomplete. Not only that, but also the technology is lost. Many technologies that were common in my time have become lost ancient technologies now. Nowadays, every outstanding young man who aspires to join the Star Wars will be subjected to strict and terrible tests, and failure means death. From your clothes and conversation, I know that you live a decent life and receive a good education. Are you sure you want to give up such a life and devote yourself to the Star Sea to fight? You should understand that you may not even survive the operation. How to turn an ordinary person like Roland into a killing machine on the battlefield and a fearless warrior. How to turn him into a standard warrior of the Star Wars. Many things are needed. They need to be infused with faith. These warriors must have strong beliefs beyond ordinary people. Only with the support of Iron Will can they go from one Shura field to another Shura field. Only in this way can the warriors keep their hearts and not go crazy in the seemingly endless battles and killings. Strict training is also needed, how to control the combat armor worn on the body, familiarize themselves with the performance of armor and weapons, and integrate tactical actions into every cell of the body, and these are just basic courses. Tactical teaching is needed. The warriors of the Star Wars Corps cannot be mechanical warriors who only know how to accept orders. They must be smart, studious, and alert. But the premise for completing all these courses is that the person must be able to survive the terrible, even cruel operation. It is not without cost to transform a delicate, pampered ordinary person into a nearly 3-meter tall, muscular man with excellent combat genes, who is like a strong warrior born for battle. The whole transformation depends on a series of operations, and the whole process is very cruel and dangerous. Even in the era before Li woke up, when the emperor was still walking among the people, it was a dangerous thing to perform such an operation. Now, 9,000 years later, the empire has lost too much science and technology in the long time and war, and the current operation process is only more dangerous than it was back then. For the young Roland, this will be a gamble that requires his life. I may have a mental breakdown because I can't bear the pain, I may also mutate due to genetic mutation and become a monster without a mind, I may also die on the operating table. I know all these possible results very well, Roland said with great determination, but even so, I hope to become a soldier of the glorious Star Wars. I can no longer stand the life of living a life of eating and waiting for death based on the glory of my ancestors. I hope to follow you so that I can become a truly glorious soldier and finally die with honor on the battlefield, just like my ancestors. Why do you think so? I want my life to be meaningful, sir, Roland said at attention, I want to have the power to protect others, protect the empire, do something for the empire and the emperor, instead of wasting my life on meaningless enjoyment. There is nothing wrong with the high-sounding words, but it is not necessarily the real idea. Li nodded. As a citizen of the empire, this awareness is really beyond words. Well, if I can become the leader of a Star Wars group, I promise that I will consider you first when recruiting soldiers. Roland's face was full of smiles. He was extremely satisfied to get such a guarantee. He saluted Li again and said, "Thank you, Captain Li." "Don't be happy in a hurry," Li said, "even if there is a letter of appointment from the Emperor, it is hard to say what the result will be. The Emperor has been silent in the Golden Throne for 9,000 years. How much power does he have left?" Li is very skeptical. Chapter 24. Although the Emperor is now the faith of all mankind, to some extent, the great Emperor has become a symbol, a belief, or even a god created by humans, but in this era, the great Emperor can hardly be considered a person. This is not what the Emperor wants. Li remembers very clearly that the Emperor did not like idol worship during his lifetime. He also clearly stated that he was not a god, but a person. From a certain perspective, the Emperor can be said to be a firm materialist. He believes in what he sees with his eyes and what can be proved by experiments. He hates ignorant and superstitious things such as gods, witchcraft, and magic. For a while, the Emperor tried to pass legislation to prohibit others from worshipping him as a god, but even so, secret religious societies still emerged in an endless stream. And when the Emperor was seriously injured and entered the Golden Throne, this kind of religious groups emerged in an endless stream, and now it has become a state religion with a long history. Since the Emperor has become a high god, the secular power naturally falls on others. At this time, the actual controller of the real power of the empire is an institution called the Imperial Elders' Council. Just as Li and Roland finished their conversation, young Roland left Li's hut with a smile in the afternoon sun. On the other side of the earth, the sky was covered with darkness, but the earth was brightly lit. The lights here will never go out at any time, even in the Great Rebellion, in the most critical and darkest moments of mankind, it is still bright here. Because this is the heart of the entire galaxy for mankind. This is the most sacred place on the entire earth, the Imperial Palace, this is the palace belonging to the Emperor. In this Imperial Holy Land, the most sacred place in the world, only the footsteps of the Imperial Guards can be heard. These warriors in golden armor are the most loyal guards, fearless gazes, firm hands, and sincere swords. The Eternal Guardians guard the most sacred gift left by the Emperor deep in the palace, the body of the Emperor, the greatest treasure of the Empire. And on the outskirts of the Imperial Palace, in a gorgeous and vast conference hall, a small routine meeting is being held. There were only 4 people participating in the meeting. They sat around a small old wooden round table, occasionally communicating in low voices, occasionally discussing loudly, and sometimes they would argue fiercely. Their discussion was fast and efficient. One problem after another was dealt with decisively by them, and orders were issued from here. Any ambitious person would have his heartbeat accelerated when seeing this scene, because this is the holy place in their hearts, the place that determines the fate of the entire human race and even the galaxy, the pinnacle of human power, and the orders issued from here can easily determine the survival of a galaxy. This is the venue of the Imperial Elders Conference. At this time, a small Imperial Elders Conference was being held. The tribunal believes that he is a dangerous person and should continue to be observed and monitored, and should not be given any power or position. The speaker was an old man, his voice was like the cold wind blowing over the sand, dry and cold. The old man was wearing a gorgeous robe, which was decorated with skulls of various sizes, which made people feel terrified at a glance, and the white fur on the collar showed his dignity. The old man has an eagle-like nose, a half-bald forehead, and his hair is neatly combed back, but the most memorable thing about the old man is his eyes, which are a pair of sharp and cold eyes, as if no secret in the world can escape these eyes. In the Imperial Senate, this old man is a representative from the tribunal, the supreme judge of the tribunal, who represents the emperor's will and imperial edict. It is said that they are omniscient, and omniscient. In the eyes of the tribunal, everyone is dangerous. And it must be mentioned that the House of Nobles has issued an ultimatum. According to the imperial law, we can only detain him for 3 more days at most. After 3 days, he must be free. The speaker is an old man sitting opposite the representative of the tribunal. The old man's face is hidden in the white hood, making it difficult to see his appearance. He holds a delicate long quill pen in one hand and flips through an ancient book with the other hand. While talking, the old man occasionally makes some marks in the book. The speaker is the Minister of the Interior of the Empire. He is the spirit and knowledge of the Emperor. His subordinates are as numerous as stars. All the data of the country must be handled by their department. Nobles, what do those idiots who only know how to eat meat know? The Supreme Judge said coldly, they will never let go of any bit of meat. Where there is food, they will pounce there. Do they know what danger is? They don't understand. Those idiots only have interests in their eyes. That is the benefit they deserve. They are just safeguarding the legitimate rights and interests of the aristocracy. By doing so, they are also safeguarding the stability of the empire. The Minister of the Interior calmly expressed his opinion. Besides, that person has passed the review, and the review results also show that there is no problem. I hope the tribunal can let go. After all, he is a hero from the legendary era. He is just a warrior cursed by the evil god and cannot be trusted. Even Horus may fall into chaos, let alone heroes. But you don't have any evidence, the Minister of the Interior said calmly, there is not even a hint of warning. Unwarranted accusations are not moral behavior. And what if you are wrong? The empire will suffer huge losses because of your wrong judgment. Who is qualified to judge who is right and who is wrong? The Supreme Judge said coldly, we are surrounded by terrible and powerful enemies, and there are unknown heretics within us. Enemies who want to kill us are everywhere. In this era, we cannot afford the luxury of morality. Moreover, we don't need to take risks. Why should we give this dangerous person the opportunity to hold military power? He may bring the sword given to him by the Empire to hurt the Empire. The establishment of the Star Wars Corps and the appointment of the head are the will of His Majesty the Emperor. Do you want to question the Emperor? The Minister of the Interior said, and in fact, he will get not only military power, but also a series of powers on internal affairs. Everyone, take a look at the resolution from the nobles. As he said this, the Minister of the Interior distributed a document to the other 3 people present. When the other 3 saw the document, their expressions all changed. How can this be? The third of the 4 said, even though I rarely pay attention to political issues, I know that if this is done, there will be big problems. This kind of thing has happened in the Empire before, but none of them have had good results. I think this is simply encouraging crime. The voice of the speaker was steady and mechanical, and occasionally there was an electronic rustling sound in the words, as if his voice was not coming from a human throat, but from an old TV or radio. This was almost the case, because the speaker was the manufacturing director of the Martian Mechanics. He was the power and skill of the Emperor. Their forge world provided power for the Emperor's army, and they managed the production of imperial fire. The followers of the Mechanics believed in the mechanical god, a god that existed in confidential machinery. Moreover, most of the followers of the Mechanics were keen on modifying their bodies, especially the manufacturing director. His throat, which was made of, had been completely damaged and unusable 200 years ago. For ordinary people, this was almost equivalent to death, but for the manufacturing director, this was just a small trouble. It only required a small operation to replace a part in the body, and it could be easily solved. A purely mechanical vocal organ replaced the original throat. From then on, the voice of the manufacturing director became like this. The voice continued, we can't give a person such a high power, that is, a leader of a Star Wars group, and also an interstellar archon. He will completely control, there are actually 3 star systems, and she also has a powerful elite armed force with a very high self-regulation system that is even completely controlled by him alone. There was no need to use more words to explain, and the people present understood the meaning of the manufacturing director's words. Chapter 25. Anyone with common sense knows that the separation of military and politics has always been one of the effective means for the central government to control the local areas. When a local official has both political power and military power, he is equivalent to the local king. When this person has such a huge power, it is difficult to guarantee that he will not be overwhelmed by such a huge power, and the probability of rebellion will be greatly increased. Even though the Star Marine Corps is basically a highly autonomous group, they have their own dominions, their own traditions, and their own internal affairs system. But from a certain perspective, they are also subject to the supervision of the Empire, and the territory controlled by the Star Marine Corps is one of the many means of control. Most of the territories of the Star Marine Corps are barren, and even some planets with extremely harsh environments. Being in a harsh environment at any time can temper the will of the warriors on the one hand, and on the other hand, it can greatly weaken the logistics of the Star Marine Corps, prevent them from being too strong, and force them to rely on the Empire in more places. 3-star systems? That's a bit too much. How could that be? Is he a descendant of a noble family? At this point, the Supreme Judge frowned. The surname Li is unfamiliar. I have never heard of a noble family with this surname. And even if they were nobles, it would be difficult for them to own 3-star systems. Since the Great Rebellion, the Empire has rarely concentrated too much power in one person or one family. He is not a descendant of a noble family. Robert Lee's father was just an ordinary nobleman who ate, drank, and had fun, living a meaningless life like most ordinary nobles. But Robert's grandfather was very famous for a period of time. He was Eldoró Lee. Eldoró? The famous explorer in history. Yes, that's him. For a period of time, 5% of the star maps in the Far East Star region included the overview of the planets, route detection, and even the preliminary exploration of the world. All of these were completed by Eldoró and his team, and the remaining 50% were completed by his admirers under his influence. The Emperor once personally rewarded him, and those 3 galaxies were the most dazzling prizes among many rewards. Then the Minister of the Interior said the names of 3 unfamiliar galaxies. The other 3 just looked at the Minister of the Interior in silence. They said nothing because they didn't know which 3 places the Minister of the Interior was talking about. This can't be blamed on them. Even a genius with a superb memory can't remember every place in the Empire, because for a single human being, the territory of the Empire is too large. So how big is the Empire? To put it in a more emotional way, on a cloudless night, when you walk into the depths of darkness and look up at the vast starry sky, you will see the stars in the night sky, the twinkling Milky Way, and the stars that blink at you. Looking at the northern half of the sky, the Milky Way goes northwest from Aquila, passes through Sagitta, Vulpecula, Cygnus, Cepheus, Cassiopeia, then turns southeast, passes through Perseus, Auriga, Taurus, Gemini, Orion, Monoceros on the celestial equator, enters Canis Major, Puppis, Vela in the southern half of the sky, and turns northwest again, crossing Carina, Southern Cross, Centaurus, Cercinus, Norma, Scorpio, Sagittarius and Scutum. There are so many beautiful constellations, such a beautiful Milky Way in the night sky, but when you appreciate all this, you should know that every star you see belongs to the territory of the Empire. What you see is only a very small part. There are many stars in the dark universe that you cannot see with your naked eyes. You need to use an astronomical telescope. In the deeper universe, there are more human territories that you cannot see even with an astronomical telescope. The Empire's territory is so vast that no one can name all the planets owned by the Empire just by memory. Rationally speaking, when we open an old-fashioned flat star map of the Milky Way, you will find that the Milky Way is simply divided into 5 parts by scholars. An arc centered on the solar system where the Earth is located is the center of the Empire. Many famous worlds are concentrated here. The Empire calls this place the solar star field, and the upper, lower, left, and right of the solar star field are the hazy star field in the north, the storm star field in the south, the Taiping star field in the west, and the Far East star field in the east. Among them, the Far East star field is the largest star field, which even occupies most of the Milky Way. The Far East star field is vast and sparsely populated, and the Empire's control here is the weakest, and a large part of the threats also come from here. The Minister of the Interior now pointed his finger at a part of the Far East star region. The 3-star systems should be in this area. The Minister of the Interior pointed to the star map and said so. That area is a little too far away, the Supreme Judge asked, is it within the control of the Empire? In fact, even the Emperor's will cannot reach such a distant place. That's really inconvenient. At first glance, the reward sounds so generous, 3-star systems, what a generous reward, and these are just one of many rewards, but when they saw the star map, they realized that these 3-star systems are nothing at all. Because these 3 galaxies are too far away for the Empire, even so far away that even the Emperor's will cannot touch. If it is in a place like this, then I have no reason to object, the manufacturing director said in a mechanical voice. The Empire's control over the Far East is already very weak, and it is difficult for us to provide resource support to such a distant place. And military protection, having a certain amount of force can help humans gain a foothold in a place full of threats. The Minister of the Interior smiled and nodded and said, I think so too. These 3 galaxies have been very lucky not to be attacked by powerful enemies in the past 9,000 years, but no one can predict what will happen in the future. Yes, a stable human colony will help us gain a foothold in the Far East and continue human exploration of the Far East, and this is also in the interest of the Empire. Not only that, he will also become a sentinel of the Empire. The Supreme Judge also nodded and said, many evidences show that new threats are gradually forming in the Far East, such as green-skinned orcs, Tau people, and many others that we don't understand at all. For the Empire, the Far East is still a deserted land full of dangers. A strong interstellar governor is in the interest of the tribunal. He may not be able to defeat the enemy for the Empire, but he can help us recognize the enemy. More importantly, in such a remote place, even if this Robert E. Lee was not so loyal to the Empire, the harm he could cause was minimal. Everyone, I think your discussion is a little too far away. The 4th person who had been silent spoke up. This old man has a square face, a strong chin, and his body is decorated with gold and black bullets. His breastplate is covered with various legendary medals. He is the Grand Commander of the Empire. He is the strength and glory of the Emperor. The Grand Commander leads the Imperial Defense Force. They fight in hundreds of thousands of worlds in the name of the Emperor. There is a war going on. The Grand Commander's voice was low and deep, like a tank running at full speed. The Grand Commander continued in his deep voice, how can you be so easily sure that he will become the leader of the Star Wars? For he is about to become an interstellar archon, I have no objection, and I should not say more words in this regard, this is a matter for the nobles, but becoming the leader of the Star Chapter is not for everyone. It works. He is a fighting hero who survived the legendary era. He was once a close combat master of the Crow Guard. He also has a commission from the Emperor in his hand. The Minister of the Interior asked, I don't understand why such a person cannot become a member of the Star Wars. Head of the group. From the perspective of qualifications, he is really qualified, but have you carefully looked at his physical examination? The Commander-in-Chief said without waiting for others to answer, he has already had an operation, because of that due to the strange curse, his body returned to the appearance of an ordinary person before the surgery. His appearance seemed to have changed, but his physique was already like an ordinary person, but it was just like an ordinary person. But in fact, the hidden injuries inside his body still exist, and the latest examination results show that Robert E. Lee's body is no longer suitable for a second operation. From this point of view, there is no need to discuss it, said the Minister of Interior, but I also want to ask, what are you going to do in the face of the Emperor's will? Of course I will abide by the Emperor's will, the Grand Commander said, but the Star Wars also have their own traditions, and I cannot interfere. But I know that it is impossible for a weak person to become a member of the Star Wars, let alone now that he has become the leader of a war group. The war group will conduct a simple assessment according to their own traditions to prove that Robert Lee's body can adapt to the fierce battlefield, so there is no need to pay attention to this matter and focus on more. Go to the important place. I see. The Minister of the Interior nodded, and then he quickly moved the discussion to the next topic. The Empire is so huge, countless problems arise every day, and there are too many things that need to be resolved. Chapter 26. You mean I have the right to inherit the family business? Lee looked at the white-haired old man in front of him with some disbelief, and murmured, today is really strange. First, there is the Emperor's letter of appointment, and then there is the notice of inheritance. The white-haired old man was wearing a set of all-black medieval butler's clothes, wearing white and neat gloves, his silver-white hair was curled, and he wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses on his nose. He looked like a noble butler who walked out of a medieval scroll. In fact, this old man is indeed a butler, but at the same time, he is also a special envoy of the House of Nobles. It's not surprising at all, Lord Robert, the responsibility of the Li family should be borne by you. Since you have inherited the surname Li, you have the corresponding obligations. The old man looked at Li carefully and asked, this is the responsibility you must bear. You won't run away again, right? Run away? Of course not. Li thought to himself, this is a good thing, why should I run away? What's more, the person who ran away that year was not me. The original Robert Li was just an ignorant teenager in a purely rebellious period when he was young. The body and name that Li inherited did not come from an ordinary family. Robert Li's grandfather was a famous explorer. He was granted a title and fiefdom by the emperor very early, and became an interstellar governor. In the empire, the titles of interstellar governors and nobles adopted the ancient hereditary system, just like the ancient nobles in the Middle Ages. The inheritance of titles depends on blood ties, not other things. It's just that in the ancient Middle Ages, the king gave the ancient nobles fiefdoms, while the emperor rewarded the interstellar governors with planets. Each interstellar governor has rights almost equivalent to those of God on his own planet. They have great freedom and can freely formulate their own laws, political ecology, and even social systems. Even now, the ancient slavery system is still practiced on some planets, and the reason is simply that the governor of that planet likes it. On other planets, the interstellar governors never even manage their own planets. As for the Empire, unless the Star Archon betrays the country, the Empire will never intervene in the internal affairs of the planet. The Star Archon can do whatever he likes on his own territory. Of course, the premise is that the planet must obey the rule of the Emperor and the Empire, and the Empire's only requirement for the Star Archon is that he must pay a certain amount of taxes to the Empire regularly according to regulations. Robert Li used to be a proud teenager. He was not willing to be a nobleman who relied on his elders like his father. He had talent and ability, so he had to rely on himself to make a career. So one day, the young Robert Li fled from his family, and soon after he met Raven, the Emperor's son and the founder of the Raven Guard. Later, Robert Li became a loyal follower of Raven, an outstanding star warrior. He fought for the honor of the Raven Guard, fought for the Emperor, and fought for all mankind. He won dazzling honors and broke through a sky, but no matter what he did, he could not change his identity and name. He is still Robert Li. From the moment he was born, he became the successor of the Star Archon. Who hasn't been young once? The old man said, but we will all grow up, mature, and take on our due responsibilities. If I need to inherit the interstellar governorship, then this will be my responsibility, and I will not refuse. There is just one thing I don't understand. 9,000 years have passed. How could it be? Let alone 9,000 years, even until the moment of the destruction of the universe, the 3 galaxies will still belong to your family. Unless your family can no longer find any heirs, the ownership of the planet will be taken back by the Empire. The white-haired old man said, the House of Nobles exists for this. We must guarantee the legitimate rights and interests of the nobles, which is also to protect the Empire, because only the nobles are the cornerstone of the Empire's existence. I can only be grateful for this. This is what we should do, and the person you should really be grateful to is not us, but your sister. If it weren't for him, perhaps the world that should have belonged to you has long been taken back by the Empire. Since you are talking about my sister, please allow me to ask a question. You are welcome, please go ahead. When I left home, the position of interstellar governor should have been left to my sister. After all, my father has more than one son, and the heir does not have to be me. My sister also has the right of inheritance. So no matter what, the heir should appear among my sister's descendants. Why did the inheritance right transfer to me now? This is your family affair. I don't know much, so I'm sorry I can't say much. The old man bowed slightly and said, but you don't need to worry. At most 3 days, your unfair imprisonment will be lifted, and your family has also sent a ship to pick you up. If the journey goes smoothly, it is expected to arrive in 3 months. By then, you will naturally be able to understand the whole story from your family. Only fools can talk nonsense about things they don't understand. How can a person who can't control his mouth become the steward of the House of Nobles? Li Ziran also understood this. He just nodded and suppressed the curiosity in his heart slightly. Compared with 9,000 years, 3 months is not very long. Soon he will know the situation at home. I see. Sir, I have brought you some documents today. These documents give you a general introduction to the 3 galaxies you own. Please take a look. As he said this, the old man took out the black briefcase. A dozen bound documents were placed on the table in front of Li. Li opened the files, looked through them carefully for a while and then threw them aside without any care. He then said to the old man, "Can you give me a general introduction? I used to know how to govern the planet. I don't know how to understand these imperial bureaucratic documents that are full of technical terms. This is my honor." The old man walked up to Li, pulled out a partial star map from the file, then pointed to a point on the star map and began to explain, "Here are the 3 things you have. The locations of the 3 galaxies are located. I must apologize that the think tank of the House of Lords does not yet have a detailed star map of the Far East, so I can only point you to a rough location to let you understand where the 3 galaxies are located. Approximate location in the galaxy. Located in the far eastern star territory. And it's so far away from the center of the Empire. Yes, although you own 3 galaxies, they are all in remote areas of the Far East that cannot be touched by the Emperor's will. For the Empire, the Far East is an undeveloped and wild area, and your galaxy it is indeed a relatively remote place in this wild area." The old man continued without caring about Li's feelings, "The average interstellar governor will only be in charge of 1 planet, and the particularly outstanding ones will be the governor of 2 planets. But it is rare for an interstellar consul like you to have several empires. If we want to say the only flaw, it is that the area is too far away." "Are you kidding? What if we are attacked by the enemy in a place like that?" "There is no way," the old man said honestly. "Under normal circumstances, the Empire will not send precious military forces to fight on such a remote planet. You don't need to tell me about this, I know it better than you." As a soldier, Li Ziran knows the Empire's usual approach. Generally speaking, if there are alien creatures or other enemies attacking the planet controlled by the Empire, then the Empire's approach is often like this. Yes, first of all, the Imperial troops on the surface will try to resist. If they cannot be defeated, then the commander will decisively retreat and abandon the planet. Then the interstellar battle group is summoned to launch a counterattack. This is the Empire's approach in those star fields that are more tightly controlled. As for those remote areas, the Empire may not even care about them. Li had long felt that these things were full of weird atmosphere. How could he have such good luck? That's 3 whole galaxies. What a huge power this is. How could the Empire hand over such an important position so casually to a person who had just woken up? Suddenly, Li seemed to have caught something he had missed. "Wait a minute, you just said so far away that even the Emperor's will cannot reach. Isn't this just an ordinary metaphor?" The old man was stunned, but then he understood. He explained, "I thought you knew better, so I apologize again. The sentence 'so far away that even the Emperor's will cannot touch' is not a simple metaphor. Speaking of this, it happened after the Great Rebellion, so naturally you won't understand, so let me explain it to you." Li nodded, and the old man said, "Sir, you should know that after the Great Rebellion, the Great Emperor returned to the Golden Throne, but His Majesty the Emperor is not just sleeping there. The Golden Throne is a whole complex system, and this system is directly connected to the Star Moment Tower, which means that the soul of His Majesty the Emperor is closely linked to the light of the Star Moment Tower. Otherwise, how can we say that His Majesty the Emperor is always there? Aren't you protecting humanity? May His Majesty the Emperor protect you and me." Li opened his mouth for a moment, with a look of disbelief on his face. You mean that place is so remote that even the starlight of the Star Moment Tower cannot be seen?" The old man looked at Li with a trace of pity in his eyes. "It's regrettable, that's the fact." Chapter 27. What is the greatest threat to the Empire in the entire universe? Is it a weird and cruel alien creature? Or a terrifying and evil chaos demon? Or are they the ignorant people who came to betray their own beliefs in the Emperor? Yes, these are all threats to mankind, but the sum of all these threats is not as great as the threat to the Empire from the universe itself, which is a threat from the universe. In fact, the universe is now too big for humans. Just in the Milky Way exists there. It does nothing. Just the Milky Way itself is enough to make the Empire fall apart. Because the Milky Way is so big, to a certain extent, it is big enough to make humans feel deep despair about their own insignificance. When walking in a city, you will use meters as the unit to measure the distance you have walked. If you are traveling between cities by car, then you will use kilometers or kilometers to measure the distance you have traveled, but if you were traveling between galaxies in the Milky Way, distance would be measured in light years. What is a light year? If you walk at the speed of light in a straight line for 1 year, the distance traveled during this period is called 1 light year. And the speed of light can circle the Earth 7.5 times in just 1 second. So the distance traveled by walking at the speed of light for 1 year will be what a long journey it will be. The closest galaxy to the solar system where we live on Earth is Centauri. It is a triple star, and Proxima Centauri is only 4.22 light-years away from the solar system. This means that if we go somewhere in a straight line at the speed of light, it will take us at least 4 years. If you travel in the vast galaxy, even if you have the speed of light, it will be a long journey. Fortunately, our universe is not a single existence. The universe we know is only a part of the huge universe. In reality, there is also a completely independent and coexisting unrealistic universe. This universe is generally called a different space. Of course, there are many names for different spaces in different environments. The residents of the Empire will also call different spaces chaos and different worlds, while some other alien creatures will call them chaos and different worlds. That world is called the Ether or Empyrean, void and unreal universe. Humanity's scientific and technological research is aimed at developing and utilizing different spaces, and the most important achievement is navigation in different spaces. To put it simply, navigation in different spaces is like the space jumping technology in traditional science fiction novels. After entering a different space, the ship sails along the trend of the different space, sails in the different space for a period of time and then jumps out of the different space. At this time you will find that your ship has traveled several light years, and it only took you a few days. With the advent of the method of interspace navigation, mankind has leapt from the medieval horse era to the modern transportation era of airplanes. The long distances between galaxies that were originally unbridgeable have been greatly shortened by the emergence of new travel methods. But things are not that simple. For humans, different spaces are still full of unknowns and secrets. Humans have very little understanding of different spaces. Navigation in different spaces itself is also full of dangers. It was not until the emergence of the Star Moment Tower that this all eased somewhat. To put it simply, the Star Moment Tower built on the Earth is like a lighthouse on the sea of chaotic energy in different spaces. Only under the guidance of the Star Moment Tower can navigation in different spaces be rapid and safe, but once you leave the glory of the Star Moment Tower, traveling in different spaces will become extremely difficult and full of dangers. This is also the reason why Lee was shocked. Simply put, the position that the Star Moment Tower can illuminate is the range within the capabilities of the Imperial Core. A remote area is attacked. If there is a military surplus, the Empire may send out its precious military forces. But if it is so remote that even the Emperors cannot reach it, then you can understand it without even thinking. The Empire will not waste its precious power on these places. Although theoretically, all planets in the galaxy belong to humans and the Great Emperor, in fact, today's human military is unable to completely control the world within the coverage of the Star Moment Tower. Not to mention those worlds outside the starlight range of the Star Moment Tower. To the residents of the Empire, the fiefdom owned by Lee was undoubtedly a wild world. "Sir, you don't have to worry," the old man could only say with relief. "In fact, your fiefdom has not suffered a large-scale invasion by alien creatures in the past 9,000 years. So in the next 9,000 years, it is possible for it to continue peacefully. But it is also possible that tomorrow they will be occupied by alien creatures that emerge from the depths of the universe. And the Empire will undoubtedly abandon those places completely. It cannot be denied that this is indeed a possibility." "I understand." Lee said this while looking at the letter of appointment on the table. 3 days later, Lee's confinement and surveillance were indeed lifted, and Lee finally walked out of the monastery. This was the first time he smelled the free air after waking up. Roland was waiting for Lee at the door of the monastery with a smile on his face. "Welcome back to the free world. Does Mr. Lee have any plans for the near future?" "Well, anyway, let's get in the car first." It was an old-fashioned black classic car. The car roared like an old man's asthma, started slowly, and then took the two of them away from the monastery with grass and trees. After just turning a corner, Lee discovered he came to the city of Steel Jungle. "This is... I'm surprised, the Earth is like this now, I mean, the whole Earth is like this. The monastery you were in before is already one of the few places on the Earth with green space. The land price is too high, there is no other way. And as the Empire gradually becomes stronger, the land on the Earth becomes more and more precious. Nobles from all over the galaxy have to set up offices in the Imperial capital, and rich people in the entire galaxy have to set up offices in the Imperial capital. Everyone wants to buy a house on the Earth. So the whole Earth has become a big city. It is said that the earth has had a sea for a long time. It is said that the sea is a super huge bathtub, boundless at a glance. It's not even close to the edge, and the water inside is salty. Is this true? Of course this is true. Is there no sea on earth now? Ah, the mountains have been flattened and the sea has been drained. That's what the book says, but I haven't seen the mountains, rivers, and seas yet. I have never left the earth in my life, and the entire earth has become what you can see with your eyes. It looks like a metropolis, full of crowded people and buildings. I have long been tired of these things. Nowadays, only some big nobles still have their own monasteries and green spaces. Li is unwilling to talk about this topic anymore. He is not an environmentalist and has no extra time to care about environmental changes. He is more concerned about the current situation now, so, where are we going now? My home, Roland said, you can stay at my home during this period. The festival has just passed, and it is not easy to find a house outside during this period. Do you have any plans for the near future? Arrange? Li looked at the unfamiliar earth outside the car window and couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. What do I want to do? Back to the Raven Guard? No, that woman was right. Li checked the relevant records of the Empire and found that there were indeed huge flaws in the Crow Guard's surgery. In addition, the Raven was also missing. It was difficult to say whether the chapter still existed. Besides, even if the battle group is still there, and Li doesn't really want to go anywhere. Li had very complicated feelings about the Ravens and the Crow Guard. On the one hand, he wanted to go to that mentor, no, the place where he had lived and fought. On the other hand, he was afraid if there were any familiar people there. Where are my people? It is not impossible that the Astartes would simply fall on the battlefield without fear of the passage of time. Fighting on the battlefield? To shed the last drop of blood for the Empire? No, this is not what the current Robert E. Lee thinks. Maybe the original Robert E. Lee had this idea, but the current E. Lee is just a young man who has traveled from the earth in a peaceful time. He feels that he does not have such a high standard. Consciousness. Be a romantic aristocrat in the game world? It seems impossible at the moment. He is just a name inherited from a small nobleman outside the border. He only has an empty fiefdom. On an earth full of powerful people, his family's small power may not be as good as that of an ordinary person. Of bureaucracy. It is very difficult to be romantic and happy when you have no power and no money in your pocket. However, ideals and future architecture have to be put aside. Today there are more pressing issues. Chapter 28. Nowadays, the most important issue is the issue of one's own safety. From the current stage, the Empire has some special institutions with great powers, which should be used to deal with those chaos demons. Perhaps it was because his body was hit by the curse of the evil god during the Great Rebellion, which made these institutions particularly interested in him. When Li just woke up, he didn't know the name of the tribunal very well. After all, there were no such messy things in the legendary era when the Emperor was still walking among the people, but people can't always live in memory. When Li was under house arrest, he read a lot of books about the tribunal, which was considered to be an understanding of the Empire. If you want to use the shortest words to describe the Empire's demon tribunal, it is a special institution with great power composed of a group of persecuted delusional and lunatics. They firmly believe that if there is an enemy outside, then there will be 100 enemies inside the Empire, so they will use all their methods to find these tainted enemies hidden inside, and then purify them, usually by burning them into ashes. If they are wrong, then sorry, it is your bad luck, but in order to prevent possible internal enemies from escaping, your sacrifice is not worthless. In this way, your ashes may be able to enter the imperial cemetery, provided that if your ashes are still there and have not been mixed with the ashes of other unlucky people, and if someone still remembers your name, then you can get a decent funeral. Because of this, everyone should pray that they will not have any involvement with this organization, they will never bring you good things. Now thinking back to the trial he first accepted, Li can't help but feel a little scared. The words that the crazy woman named Elizabeth said to him were not intimidation, she was serious. As long as he showed a little sign that he was not Robert Lee, and there was another soul in this body, once she found out, she would definitely rush to him excitedly, take full responsibility for his trial, and purify himself personally. What made people feel even more devastated was that she had every right to do so. She could even kill Lee completely legally with just suspicion and some groundless evidence. As long as she wanted, she could do it. The most important thing is that Robert Lee is not the same Robert Lee as before. He now clearly feels what it means to be guilty. 9,000 years is too long, and Li is fully aware of all the experiences of his previous life. He knows those childhood memories better than his previous life Robert. If Li wants to disguise himself, no one should be able to see the flaws, but these cannot extinguish the fear in Li's heart, because as long as she suspects herself and wants to kill herself, she doesn't even need a decent evidence. Li wants to curse, what is this bullshit law made by that bastard? Is there any human rights at all? But the reality is like this. Although the Empire has always claimed that they will guarantee the personal rights of citizens, the Empire has also always claimed that personal interests must unconditionally serve the collective interests, which are the interests of the Empire, so anyone who knows a little about those institutions will know that the so-called human rights are completely bullshit. If Li is still powerless and imprisoned like a few days ago, then this terrible department will not pay too much attention to him, but it is hard to say under the current situation. Li is the leader of a Star Wars regiment that is about to be established, and he is also the actual controller of 3 galaxies. In this way, it seems that there is no choice. In order to make himself more like Robert Li, he must go to the battlefield like a fanatical warrior with passion, and in order to make himself safer, he must stay away from the center of the Empire. Although the Far East is a little remote, what's wrong with being remote? At least there, he doesn't have to live under possible surveillance every day. And didn't he say that his hometown has not suffered large-scale attacks in the past 9,000 years? Then maybe the next 9,000 years can be spent safely. Is it just to give his life to the mysterious future? The soul has been imprisoned in the body for 9,000 years, and has learned so many messy things. Is it just to come to this inexplicable world to wait for death? Can only rely on the mercy of luck, pray that the disaster will not happen to him, and then live so weakly? What a joke! Li gritted his teeth and said, now he is not just a weak boy who knows nothing. Sir? What did you say? Roland asked while driving. I said don't look at me. Pay attention to the road. Under Roland's control, the old car was driving at a very high speed on the road, and after avoiding a vehicle that suddenly turned, it returned to the lane and continued to drive smoothly. Li sighed and said, death is really everywhere. I can't just fall down like this. No matter what, I have to form my own Star Wars group. Of course, how could we die in a meaningless car accident? Roland laughed and said, even if we die, we must fall with you on the epic battlefield. Don't think so far ahead, Li said seriously, let me ask you, if a person's body has been judged to be unable to undergo transformation surgery again, can he still become a Star Wars team member? How is it possible? People who have not undergone transformation cannot defeat those warriors who have undergone surgical transformation. Whether it is bones, muscles, speed, explosive power, recovery after injury, ordinary people and standard space warriors, it's like a child and an adult compared to each other. And there are no weaklings among the Star Wars. Yes, what's wrong with you? I once underwent an operation, but because of the enemy, I became a normal person again. But now my body can no longer accept the operation, Li said calmly, from now on, I can survive with this fragile body. What? Roland's hand shook, and the old car almost ran out of the driveway. Fortunately, Li pulled the steering wheel and the car swung back onto the driveway. What you just said, you can't have surgery. Well, I think it's better if we go home and continue talking. Li whispered, I don't want to die in a car accident. The next day, Li rejected Roland's plan to take him around the Earth. Without even a basic sense of security in his heart, how could Li have the energy to see any places of interest? Besides, even if you want to travel around, there is nothing to see on Earth now. The Earth, as a political and religious megacity, has been transformed beyond recognition by humans. The mountains have been flattened, the seas have been drained, and all you can see are majestic buildings, neat streets, and exquisite sculptures. So the next day, Li took Roland to the Space Marines Earth headquarters, which was an ancient monastery on top of a tall building. To be honest, this scene looks a bit nondescript. On the top of a building full of modern and ultra-modern atmosphere, there is this simple monastery, as if someone moved the monastery intact from the mountains and rivers and placed it here. Then it just combines classical and modern styles. This is the Earth headquarters of the Space Marines. Roland's voice was trembling. Out of excitement, he said, I have only seen this sacred building through magazines before, and this is the holy place for the entire Empire's warriors. Oh, a Astarte monastery. I didn't expect that I would be lucky enough to walk inside today. with the blessing of the Emperor, this is really amazing. Oh, so this is the Start Abbey. Li stood at the door of the monastery, looking up at this famous building, and a strange feeling filled his heart. Everything in this world is completely different from what Robert E. Lee once knew. Hey, you two, what are you doing standing here? A supergiant man nearly 3 meters tall and strong walked up to the two of them. He was wearing a monk's robe, with a touch of reproach in his tone. Don't you know that the festival has passed? Civilians are only allowed to visit this place during special festivals. It is not open to the public during normal times. Besides, how did you two get here? What are the guards below doing? We are not here for a visit, Roland said. Master Li and I are here to go through the relevant procedures for the creation of the Star Wars Corps. What did you just say you created? To create the Star Wars Corps, the relevant procedures should be handled in this department. Yes, the procedures are indeed handled here, the guard looked at the two and said, it's just that none of the procedures related to the Star Wars group are allowed to be handled on your behalf. You two should be civilian staff. You can't even go in. For formalities, such important procedures must be handled personally by the group leader. This Lord Robert Lee is the leader of the Star Wars group that is about to be formed, Roland said, so can we go in now? How is that possible? The guard looked at Lee, then at Roland, and said with a sneer, listen, I don't know which aristocratic family you are from, but you have to understand that this is Start Abbey. You won't get good results if you make trouble here. If nothing happens, just leave quickly and go play somewhere else. With that said, the guard stretched out his hand and tried to push the two of them away. Chapter 29. Li suddenly moved. His hand reached out in an instant and rested on the guard's wrist. Then he gently pulled and shook the guard's nearly 3-meter-tall body. The huge body just flew out from above Li's head, and he fell to the ground with a bang. Then Li walked to the iron door as if nothing had happened and gently pulled the rope in front of the door. The rope caused the clear doorbell to ring. The guard who was thrown out by Li just lay on the ground in shock for a while. He blinked his eyes and looked at the blue sky. He thought about it again and again, but he still couldn't figure out why he flew out like this. It felt like flying in the clouds, and my whole body suddenly became light and airy, and then I was thrown away. Not to mention the guard himself, even Roland, who had been standing aside and watching, didn't understand. On one side was Li, who was only 1.75 meters tall, and on the other side was a giant man of nearly 3 meters. He just put one hand on the giant man's wrist, and then just threw the person away. Where could such terrifying power come from Li's not-so-strong body? No, he didn't even use much force. It looked like he threw away this giant man as easily as he threw away a ball of waste paper. What is this? Magic? Or a more sinister psychic ability? For a moment, the atmosphere at the gate almost solidified. Roland looked at Li in shock, not even daring to breathe. It wasn't until the doorbell rang that the doorman, who was lying on the ground, suddenly remembered his duty, and then a sense of shame came over him. He yelled, standing up and lunging at Li. At this moment, the iron door opened. A rather majestic voice sounded, "What are you doing?" "Team, Captain." The guard said, slightly panicked, "These two people want to force their way in, and they just attacked me." The captain walked out of the darkness inside the door and walked to a place where the sunlight could shine. Only then did Li and Luolang outside the door see the man's appearance clearly. This is a giant who is taller than the doorman and over 3 meters tall. There is a terrible scar running across his face from left to right, as if to divide his face into two halves with a horizontal line. "You attacked by two ordinary people." His voice was hoarse and low, like an old-fashioned engine. "It seems that you were knocked to the ground by two ordinary people, and then you wanted to attack from behind." I said, "McCain. Where is your honor?" "Captain, that's not the case. I just didn't pay attention for a moment and was attacked by this guy." McCain wanted to continue explaining, but all his words were interrupted by the captain's roar. "Shut up and stand at attention." McCain stood on the grass like a javelin, motionless, but his face turned red and his eyes stared at Li. "First, you were knocked down by an ordinary person, and then, you actually wanted to attack him from behind. I just thought you were an aggressive, troublemaking guy, but I didn't expect you, a bastard, to be like this. McCain, I am very disappointed in you." After saying this, the captain lowered his head and looked down at Li and Roland. "Okay, after teaching my soldiers, let's take a look at you two. Hey, you two are quite brave, you actually came here to act wild, and you even dared to take action against the soldiers of the Star Road group. My friend Roland and I came here to handle official business, but we didn't expect to be unreasonably blocked by this soldier, Lee said. Also, please pay attention to your words, the word acting wild way is not suitable for this kind of situation. My soldiers are not blocking you out of unreason, the captain said, this is the Astartes monastery, and those who need to come here to handle official business are all Astartes monks. It is not a place that ordinary citizens of the Empire should enter. In this era, the Space Marines are no longer a pure fighting group. Since the second founding of the army, all Space Marines have been religious, just like the Paladin in the Middle Ages. On the one hand, these warriors wearing heavily armored warriors need to learn fighting and killing skills. On the other hand, they must accept the beliefs of the state religion and constantly consolidate their faith in the Emperor during training and combat. Therefore, Space Marines are also called Brother Astartes in many areas of the Empire. I am not an ordinary Imperial citizen. This is obvious, the captain gestured his height with his hands, and then looked at Lee's height. Okay, ordinary citizens, state your name, I will miss your commander or the local sheriff. Report your actions and be prepared to be punished if you don't have a good explanation. I am Robert E. Lee, the Crow's Claw. You are, how is it possible? There was a look of astonishment on the captain's face, and he immediately realized the mistake in his words. You are Robert E. Lee? I'm so sorry, I didn't expect it to be you, just now I'm very sorry for the unintentional offense. I received the news about your possible arrival very early. I didn't expect you to come so soon. So, please come in. In fact, a document about Robert Lee was sent from the headquarters 3 days ago. The document specifically mentioned in red that Robert Lee could not accept a second body modification operation. At that time, no one could understand the meaning of this passage in the material. What does it mean to be unable to accept a second body modification operation? Isn't the body modification operation completed in one go? Is it divided into the first and second times? After seeing Lee's appearance, he roughly understood the whole story, but then he had more questions, but these questions were not what he should ask now. Inside the monastery is an auditorium. One side of the auditorium is covered with painted glass. The sunlight shines through these colorful glass, making the whole room colorful. At the end of the auditorium, there is a huge organ, and an old man in a black robe is playing sacred music. This is an ancient military music. In the legendary era, soldiers often sang this song in the intervals between battles to praise the great emperor and gain strength from the music. Please sit here for a while. Sir Jacob Keyes will explain to you the various procedures and issues related to the establishment of the Star Wars Corps. After that, the captain withdrew. Lee and Roland sat on the long benches in the auditorium. After about 5 minutes, the music ended. The old man who played the music stood up and walked to Lee and said, I am Jacob Keyes. This black-haired man should be Sir Lee, right? Yes, I am Robert Lee. Sure enough, even after 1,000 years, even if the curse tortured your body, the crow's genes that have been integrated into your body have not changed at all, Jacob sighed and said, just like the legend, the crow guards who walked out of the shadows have pale skin and black hair. Then Lee, how should I address you? You are so young, yet so old. Should I address you as my child like other young people? Or should I address you as an elder? No need to bother, just call me Lee. The world I know has completely changed, and there is no need to mention my past glory. I am here to receive my reward. I want to set up a Star Wars group. Although it is just a procedure, I still have to trouble you. Please show me the relevant documents. I have the commission granted by the great emperor. As he said this, Lee put his hand into his arms. No, don't take it out here. Please follow me. Come here. Let's talk slowly in a more comfortable place. Walking to the deepest part of the auditorium, there is a hidden door designed by the design. Pushing open the hidden door is a porch behind the auditorium. On the right side of the porch is a neat floor-to-ceiling window, and on the left is a verdant lawn in a small courtyard. On the lawn are exquisite round tables made of simple wood and large chairs. Please sit down. Do you want black tea or coffee? Jacob asked. Excuse me, Lee nodded and said, black tea is fine. Please give me coffee. Then please wait a moment. After saying that, Jacob turned and left the courtyard. When he appeared again, he had a silver tray in his hand, on which was a silver pot, 2 small round cups, and a cup of strong coffee. After Jacob poured a cup of black tea for Li and himself, the courtyard was filled with the rich aroma of tea and coffee. Chapter 30. Please forgive my little hobby, old Jacob said with a smile on his face. When people get old, they become weak. When I was young, I didn't care about these things, but at this age, people become weak. It becomes easier and easier to be affected by various things around me, and I feel more happy in such an environment. I think this has nothing to do with being weak, but that after such a long time, we have learned to observe carefully and taste carefully. When we were young, we filled our stomachs quickly and casually, and forgot to taste the food. I'm in a hurry to do some big things, but ignore some of the things around me that are truly worth cherishing. Li Xiao said, fragrant tea, sunshine, and grass, and it's also afternoon tea time. I accept you. The reception was truly wonderful. Li, you are really good at talking. You are not like an excellent warrior, but more like an excellent diplomat. I have always been like this, but most of the time I face enemies of the Empire. At that time, I can only use weapons to talk. At this point, Li picked up the tea and let his nose enjoy the overflowing tea first. He took a sip of the red tea and said, it's really good tea. So about the reason why I came here this time. Yes, establish a brand new Star Wars group. Jacob looked at Li and said with a smile, I thought you would just chat with me, an old man, all afternoon. That would be great. Although my resume shows that I am very old, I am still young both physically and mentally. So I don't have the patience to chat with an old man like me. Jacob nodded and said, okay, I understand. Soldiers loyal to the Empire naturally don't have extra time to waste. So before I get to the point, let me make a statement. The coffee beans and black tea all come from the agricultural world Bellies 14, which has the best black tea gene pool in the galaxy for support, so the initial level of the warrior is difficult to guarantee. The Raven Guard suffered too heavy a blow during the Great Rebellion, and the Legion's gene pool also suffered a serious blow. Because of these reasons, the Legion was almost destroyed. When encountering great difficulties, the Empire will dispatch think tank curators. These people will swear allegiance to you and manage the gene bank for you. However, the accumulation of the gene bank needs to be completed by yourself, and neither the headquarters nor the Empire can help. In Li's understanding, the so-called gene pool is like the initial template for character construction in online games. But online games are different from reality after all. Each character in the game has the same initial points, which ensures that the game can be played fairly, but the word fair does not exist in reality. Everyone is born with different preferences. Some people are destined to be stronger than others, while some people are smarter, and some people have some special talents. These differences come from the genes in the human body. The gene pool of the historic group ensures that its warriors will be more powerful than the average star chapter, which allows their recruits to start at a higher starting point than others. It's like getting more points when building the initial template of a new warrior. I know, Li nodded, I will find a solution to this problem. What I just mentioned is the difficulty for a brand new battle group, but for you, there are completely different difficulties. Oh. You should know that the Star Wars is not an ordinary fighting group. Each chapter has its own traditions and rules, and the same is true for us as a whole, old Jacob said. We have always had a tradition, which can also be said to be a bad habit, is that we cannot accept the weak. Our Star Wars Corps is the strongest warrior group and a knight galloping across the stars, so every incoming captain will prove himself through a battle. Strength. Li remained calm, as if he hadn't seen Jacob's sharp eyes. He asked lightly, what kind of battle was it? It's just a simple hand-to-hand battle, without wearing power armor, and only allowing the use of cold weapons. There are no rules in the battle, only the strong and the weak, victory and defeat. And in such a battle, you are alone. He will face the challenge of 3 standard warriors of the Star Wars. Jacob sighed and said, for the general leader of the Star Wars, this is not a problem. It can be said that such a fighting performance is of a great nature. Regarding the fight itself, because everyone who can become the leader of the Star Wars is a strong man on the battlefield. They have strong physical and mental strength and have withstood cruel tests and countless battles. Standard soldiers are like 3 weak children in front of such warriors. Those who are about to become the leader cannot fail in such a fight. Jacob looked at Li and sighed, but you don't. Same thing, it's the other way around for you.